This realm creates an ocean of mana, but unless you possess the blood of an ancient dragon, touching this raw power is a death sentence. That is why every mage must forge a filter known as a mana heart circle. For normal adults, this creates a trial of patience spanning months of grueling focus. However, logic does not apply to our protagonist, Dale. While his elven instructor warns him against the dangers of rushing, the impossible has already happened. Her eyes widen in pure disbelief as he reveals the truth. The circle is already complete. Her mind cannot comprehend it. How could this 8-year-old child, a novice who just began his journey, master the impossible in mere minutes? But forming the heart circle is merely the first step on the path to power. The true nightmare lies in unleashing the energy you have gathered. And this is where Dale reveals his true colors as a monster of talent. On his very first attempt, he unleashes a Glacial Bolt that obliterates a massive tree in a single heartbeat. The display of raw power shakes his teacher to her very core. If he can cause this much destruction with basic magic, what catastrophe will he unleash with the dark arts? But to understand this genius, we must rewind to the tragedy that forged him. Hansung was once the supreme commander of an earth consumed by a hellish apocalypse of flesh-eating beasts. Yet, in the chaos of war, a dimensional rift tore open, dragging him screaming into a strange new world. The mages of this land hailed him as the otherworldly hero, the savior destined to slay the Demon King. But when Hansung demanded to return home, their gratitude turned to treachery. Bound by a slave spell, he spent the next 10 years as a weapon, carving a path of blood and death for the glory of the Empire. He endured it all, clinging to the hope of freedom. Finally, the Demon King fell by his hand, but the Empire never intended to let their favorite dog go free. Even after his legendary victory, they commanded one final atrocity, the execution of the Radiant Knight, Sir Badel. Hansung was a prisoner in his own body, forced to obey the curse. With heavy regret, he crossed blades with the knight and stained his hands with the blood of a righteous man. But fate is a cruel mistress. In the moment of his hollow victory, a treacherous blade pierced Hansung through the back. He had sacrificed everything, endured torture in hell, only to be discarded like garbage by the very people he saved. Count Brandenburg sneered, treating the hero like a broken tool. As darkness took him, Hansung swore a blood oath to carve his vengeance into the soul of the Empire. That very night, his spirit defied death, crossing the void to possess a new vessel. Lady Elena cradled this newborn life, unaware of the demon within. And the boy's father was a legend in his own right, the greatest necromancer on the continent, Duke Alan Saxon. Before his death, Hansung had stolen the Stone of Reincarnation. It was his desperate gamble to shatter the chains of the enslavement spell. But he never expected to be reborn into the lap of nobility. He was ready to live a life of luxury, all while plotting the ultimate slaughter of those who wronged him. However, Duke Saxon instantly noticed something unnatural about his son. The newborn did not shed a single tear. Silence filled the room, and the Duke feared this was an omen of darkness. But fear not. The nanny stepped in with her legendary secret technique, the thunderous palm of discipline. The unrivaled hero, who withstood torture and war, found himself defeated by the stinging humiliation of a nanny's hand. Even his new mother decided to join the assault. But as she raised her hand, the blow never came. Instead, a gentle warmth enveloped him. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, a tender embrace soothed his weary soul. Hansung had known only loneliness and war until this moment. The wall around his heart crumbled. The tears finally flowed. Not from pain, but from a love he never knew existed. It was enough to make a grown man weep. Years later, in the master bedroom, Dale's parents discuss his terrifying potential. The 8-year-old has been a relentless scholar since the age of 4, filling his parents with immense pride. Duke Alan sees the fire of magic in Dale's eyes, but his wife pinches his cheek, a sharp reminder of their solemn vow, the promise that they would never, under any circumstances, teach the boy the dark path of necromancy. She warns him with a worried gaze, but Alan assures her he has prepared a different path for the boy's upcoming birthday. Suddenly, a frantic knock interrupts them. The maid bursts in, panic in her voice, delivering shocking news about young Dale's condition. Hearing this, the parents sprint through the halls. They find their son standing in the study, his small body trembling as a storm of mystical blue aura consumes him. Dale cries out to them, His mother rushes forward, scolding him through her fear, desperate to check for injuries. But the Duke stands frozen, his eyes narrowing as he analyzes the impossible density of mana flooding the room. Their child is merely 8 years old, yet he is channeling an ocean of power that rivals a master mage. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure erupts from the Duke. His shadow looms over Dale like a reaper as he demands to know if his son dared to manipulate mana. Our boy freezes. He knows he's about to get spanked into the next dimension if he does not give the right answer. Even Dale is shocked by the sheer volume of power he released, but he knows hesitation now means a beating from his scary father. But the strike never lands. To his surprise, the Duke smiles, placing a heavy hand on his head, beaming with overwhelming pride. He laments that he cannot teach the boy necromancy himself, a confession that leaves our protagonist confused, but relieved. Rage burned within him like a fever. Without the mastery of necromancy, his grand plans for vengeance would crumble into dust. His mother urges him to rest while the servants tend to the chaos. As he rushes away, Alan and Elena share a fleeting moment of tranquility amidst the storm. The Duke has devised the perfect gift for his son. But first, the narrative shifts to the birthday banquet, where the festivities are about to begin. A sea of influential figures fills the hall. Nobles from every corner of the Noir Dukedom have gathered to pay their respects. Whispers circulate through the crowd as they await the young master. Many are desperate to catch a glimpse of the reclusive heir they haven't seen in ages. However, the star of the evening, the child everyone is waiting for, is currently isolating himself on the second floor. Radiating the energy of a true recluse, Dale finds this social obligation exhausting. He wonders if this aversion stems from his past life, where he was treated like a discarded tool. He remembers his time as a hero, used and thrown away. Even now, being pampered as a noble son feels foreign and unsettling to his warrior spirit. His mind drifts back to the incident from the other day. Dale analyzes exactly how his mana had violently erupted without warning. In truth, the trigger was the ancient records. He had been reading the chronicles of his own past life as a hero. Despite the immense talent he possesses as the young master, frustration gnaws at him. It is all meaningless if his father refuses to teach him the dark arts of necromancy. Desperate, Dale had begun spying on his parents. He schemed for a way to persuade them, even considering a reckless demand for direct tutelage. But deep down, he knew such a move would be foolish. It was a gamble he could not afford to lose. Finally, his mother, Elena, arrives. She is radiant in a gorgeous gown, congratulating her son, but Dale's eyes lock onto the cloaked figure standing behind her. The mysterious guest lowers their hood. Elena introduces the stranger as the High Elder of the Blue Magic Tower. Before him stands a stunning blue-skinned beauty, a supreme master of the water attribute. Elena presents Sophia as the boy's new mentor. Sophia greets the young master with a knowing smile. She pledges to guide him on the path to magical supremacy. Meanwhile, Dale is reeling from the shock. He cannot believe his parents secured a tower master solely to be his private tutor. But this confirms his fears. His training will focus on defensive magic, a far cry from the offensive destruction he desires. It is proof that Elena refuses to let her son walk the path of shadows. She will not allow him to become a master of death like his father. Regardless of his internal turmoil, Sophia requests a private audience. The boy suppresses his disappointment and agrees to the Tower Master's request. They step out into the pristine fields of snow. Here, the Master of the Blue Tower firmly reminds him that from this day forth, he is a student of water magic. However, Sophia's gaze is piercing. She senses the turbulence in his soul and knows his heart yearns for a different power. Her sharp intuition stuns him into silence. Sophia reasons that it is only natural for the heir of the Noir family to desire necromancy and the dark arts. The obstacle, she explains, lies in the well-known marital dynamic of the Duke and Duchess. From the moment the Duke fell for Elena and married her, fear took root in her heart. Terrified that her family would be stained by a sinister reputation, she forbade her husband from passing down his dark legacy to their children. Her protective love had twisted into control. She acted like a tyrant, shielding her family's image with an iron fist. It was so extreme that even at their wedding, she forced the attire to be pure white, banning the traditional black of the Noir house. Sophia explains the harsh reality. Because of that vow, Dale's dream of necromancy is virtually impossible under his mother's watch. Yet, the enlightened Tower Master offers a glimmer of hope. She is willing to persuade Elena, provided the boy follows her guidance without question. Dale is taken aback. He never expected Sophia to accept, let alone advocate for, the practice of necromancy. After all, she is an elf who serves the laws of nature. To her kind, the act of raising the dead is typically seen as an abomination. The Blue Tower Master chuckles, amused by the boy's narrow perspective. She poses a philosophical question. How is necromancy any different from the priests who use holy power to resurrect the dead? In her eyes, whether it is reincarnation, resurrection, or necromancy, the fundamental concept remains the same. In this single conversation, Dale realizes the depth of her wisdom. She is not bound by prejudice. Her open-mindedness proves she is the perfect mentor, satisfied with their understanding. Sophia decides it is time to begin the first lesson. She has already sensed the potential within him. She knows Dale has formed the fragments of a mana circle. His first objective is clear: expand those fragments into a complete first circle. Dale is intrigued. This fundamental training aligns perfectly with his ultimate goals. Under Sophia's instruction, he places a hand over his heart. He closes his eyes and visualizes the internal world opening up within his soul. It is a vast dimension, rich and overflowing with mana. However, raw mana is too volatile for humans. Only beings like dragons can wield it directly. A filter is required to harness this power, a vessel known as the mana heart. The technique requires precision. He must gather the scattered fragments, arrange them around his heart, and force the energy to cycle. With perfect precision, he channels the ethereal flow, forming a flawless loop around his heart. Dale follows her guidance to the letter. For the next phase of his awakening, she instructs him to rotate the mana directly around his mana heart. Usually, this agonizing process takes a month of grueling effort, so she tells him to stay strong. But then, the impossible happens. He completes it in a single heartbeat. The Tower Master's mind goes blank. The achievement of this 8-year-old child completely shatters her comprehension. A boy who had only just begun his journey has condensed his first circle in the blink of an eye. This revelation strikes like lightning. Our protagonist is not just talented, he is a monstrous prodigy. Stunned, Sophia orders him to release mana through that newborn circle. He obeys instantly. His will clamps down on the energy, asserting absolute dominance over the circle. He knows intimately how treacherous this path is for beginners. In his past life, he lacked the mana capacity to ever rival the great Duke Saxon. Back then, he was forced to rely on crude destruction spells, carved painfully into his very flesh as engravings. But fate has dealt him a new hand. In this life, he has inherited the overwhelming talent of his father. Opening the door to the highest tiers of magic, Dale's concentration sharpens to a razor's edge. He channels the energy to his fingertips, the terminus of the magic circuit. The combat experience of a seasoned veteran guides his aim. Sophia watches with bated breath as Dale perfectly crystallizes the mana into a shimmering ice bolt. The projectile screams through the air. It impacts a tree with devastating force, blasting the timber into splinters. Sophia is left reeling in shock. She expected a weak puff of cold air due to his lack of form, but the kid just annihilated a solid tree trunk. The potential of her newest disciple is not just high, it defies the very laws of common sense. The Tower Master stands frozen, unable to process the perfection of his ice spell. Meanwhile, the boy tilts his head, wondering if his excessive power was a mistake. But the truth is terrifying. The magic formula he instinctively applied is leagues beyond what a normal child could comprehend. Rotation paired with acceleration, followed by congestion. He intuitively utilized all 3 stages to achieve the legendary golden ratio of magic. Sophia has just witnessed a young master execute a high-tier concept with terrifying ease. Shaken to her very core, she realizes the frightening weight of his talent. The scene shifts to a tense confrontation. Sophia stands before the Duke and slams her resignation letter onto the desk. The Duke is thunderstruck. He cannot fathom why a mage of her caliber would abandon her post. Sophia cuts him off, her voice trembling as she describes the lethal spell the boy cast on day 1. Duke Saxon shifts in his seat, speechless. The gravity of the situation hangs heavy in the air. Sophia explains that the 8-year-old instinctively applied the golden ratio. To put it bluntly, She labels Dale as the perfect raw material for an ultimate weapon of war. The boy's father realizes the conflict. Sophia's defensive, academic teaching style is fundamentally incompatible with the violent, explosive nature of Dale's attribute. However, Sophia denies running away. She feels a desperate necessity to guide this monster's growth properly, lest he becomes a disaster. Naturally, the Duke thinks she is speaking nonsense, believing she is simply backing out of her duty. Sophia's expression turns dark. She brings up the taboo subject of the Allen family's dark magic. She knows about Lady Elena's restrictive marriage vow. With zero hesitation, a serious Sophia calls them out on their hypocrisy. She accuses them of shackling Dale's growth, wasting a talent that appears once in a millennium. Outside the door, the young master is secretly eavesdropping. He strains his ears, but the heavy wood muffles the critical details. Anxiety gnaws at him. He worries about his future. He hadn't intended to unleash such devastation, and the memory of Sophia's pale, terrified face haunts him. His greatest hurdle is clear. He currently lacks the finesse to control the overwhelming output of his spells. It is a flaw he must correct for his own survival. His deep contemplation is shattered by the booming arrival of Uncle Helmet. The uncle is ecstatic to see the young liege, while Dale's eyes light up, eager for tales from the outside world. Helmet explains his absence. He has been serving his duty to the ducal family, slaughtering powerful monsters at the border. Our protagonist connects the dots instantly. Helmet has been battling inside a dungeon. Let's pause to understand the grim reality of this world. Monsters pour forth from dungeons, turning any noble's territory into a potential graveyard. In the dark era of the Demon King, these beasts rampaged unchecked, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Now, modern-day knights are deployed to the front lines. Their mission is to ensure the nightmares remain sealed within the abyss. They hunt down any stragglers that escape. However, Duke Saxon's territory faces a unique peril, a lingering curse from Dale's past life as a hero. Although he gloriously defeated the Demon King, the villain's lair was preserved by the Empire for resource extraction. Simply put, his family is now cleaning up the chaotic mess left behind by the Demon King's fall. The conversation between Dale and Helmet is interrupted by another presence. The Duke himself enters the room. Alan expresses his gratitude to Helmet for his unwavering loyalty, but the real surprise comes a moment later. His mother appears. Lady Elena beams with pride, her face lighting up with joy upon hearing that her son has achieved his first circle. They are eager to reward his genius with a gift. Dale falls into deep thought. He briefly entertains the dark allure of necromancy, but realizes asking for dead bodies might kill the wholesome mood. Instead, the young master played a wild card, calmly demanding his parents provide him with a younger sister. The Duke and Duchess stood frozen in shock, while the armored knight erupted in laughter at the boy's sheer audacity. That night, silence fell over the estate. The young master lay awake. Frustration bubbling beneath his calm facade, acting like a naive child was exhausting work. Exhaustion finally dragged him into the abyss of sleep, but peace did not await him. In his dreams, he was Hansung once more, the fallen hero betrayed by the very knight he had trusted. The traitor's phantom mocked him, sneering at his new life of luxury. His voice dripped with venom, promising that the Empire's blades would find him no matter where he hid. "There is no escape," the shadow whispered. "We will hunt you down and extinguish your light again." Dale jolted awake, gasping for air. A terrifying surge of power flooded his small body, and his heart pounded against his ribs, threatening to burst from the pressure. It was a mana rampage, a violent storm of raw energy tearing through his physical form. Gritting his teeth, Dale cursed the Empire for haunting him even in this new life. He stumbled onto the balcony for air, but the mana only grew more volatile, leaking from him like wild smoke. Just as panic set in, a figure appeared in the moonlight. It was Master Sophia, her eyes widening as she recognized the lethal symptoms of a mana rampage. Without a second thought, she pressed her palm against his chest. A soft light glowed as she began to siphon the chaotic energy, stabilizing his core. Sophia knew the stakes were deadly. If Dale's mana corrupted his heart now, the damage would be irreversible. Fortunately, her swift intervention prevailed. The violent storm within him subsided, leaving only silence. Breathing a sigh of relief, Sophia looked into the boy's eyes. She explained that magic was not just power, it was a mirror reflecting the user's heart. Every mage's potential is shaped by their true nature, and in Dale's case, the mana did not lie. His talent was forged for slaughter. Such a dark affinity was a danger to the world and to himself, yet she did not turn away. Instead, she handed him a dark grimoire, accepting her role as the teacher of a monster. "This is the art of necromancy," she declared. It was a twist of fate that bound their paths together in shadow. This was her true birthday gift to him. Overwhelmed, the young master buried his face in her robes, embracing her tightly. Days turned into weeks. Under the pale sky outside the northern gate, Sophia began his practical training. His targets, a group of unsuspecting rabbits. She intended to replicate the pressure of a real hunt, much like the one Dale had experienced with his father. Dale focused his mind. Mana gathered at his fingertips as he prepared a lethal spell, aiming to wipe the creature from existence. An ice shard materialized and shot forward like a bullet upon impact. The target was instantly obliterated, vaporized into mist. It was a flawless execution. But Sophia noticed something chilling. Dale had taken a life without a flicker of hesitation or remorse. She recalled her earlier lesson. "Remember," she said, "the same spell yields different results depending on the mage casting it." Dale tilted his head, intrigued. Sophia pointed to the lingering frost. "Magic is the mirror of the soul," she repeated. "It exposes your true self." She began to lecture on the schools of magic, using the spell Firewall as an example. Spells are merely shapes given to imagination. The red magic tower, for instance, values raw destructive power above all else. In contrast, the blue tower seeks harmony and flow. Their philosophies shape the very nature of their mana. Your belief system is the foundation. It dictates how the world bends to your will. She listed the noir, white, and green towers, but the young master simply stared blankly. The history lesson was clearly boring him. Realizing she had lost his interest, Sophia smirked. "Enough theory," she decided. "Let us begin the real lesson, necromancy." Dale extended his hand toward the remains of the rabbit. Dark energy began to swirl, gathering around the corpse. Tendrils of purplish black aura surged forward, weaving into the flesh. Like a puppeteer, he formed mana strings to seize control of the vessel. He anchored the strings to the critical points: the skull, the spine, and the joints. The dead matter twitched, responding to his command. "Perfect," Sophia praised, watching the undead creature rise. "Now, stage 2, combine it with your ice affinity, cast frozen armor." Dale unleashed a wave of frost. The ice coiled around the undead rabbit, hardening into a jagged, spiky suit of armor. The small creature now looked like a machine of war. Sophia nodded in approval, but her eyes glinted with mischief. "Now, let us test its durability." She summoned a barrage of razor-sharp ice spikes, launching them in a spiraling vortex directly at Dale's creation. Crash. The impact sent the undead rabbit flying, shattering most of the ice. Yet, a thin layer of armor held firm. Dale's eyes lit up with triumph. The defense had held, but Sophia noticed the hunger in his gaze. "You have a question, don't you, young master?" Dale nodded eagerly, his voice rising with excitement. "Teach me the water attribute as well. I want to master it all." Sophia smiled at his ambition, but her next words cut through the air like a blade. "Absolutely not," she stated coldly. She explained that what he performed today was merely scratching the surface of elemental manipulation. Water is the most deceptive of elements. Its learning curve is treacherous, requiring an understanding far beyond simple spells. Most mages struggle to master a single element in a lifetime. Those capable of wielding two simultaneously, they are the legends known as dual mages. Despite the boy's monstrous talent, Sophia is convinced that mastering two opposing magical disciplines is a fool's errand. Her brutal honesty shatters his expectations, proving that his confidence was flying far too close to the sun. The young master's reality crumbles instantly, in the eyes of his mentor. His brilliant display of magic is nothing more than an amateur parlor trick. The rejection paralyzes him with despair. Dale is so crushed by the weight of her disappointment that the lesson ends in a suffocating silence. However, the fire in his eyes has not been extinguished. That very night, he retreats to the solitude of his study room. The soul of the former hero burns within him. He possesses an unshakable belief that with enough grit, he can shatter any limit placed upon him. A dormant power begins to awaken. Like a warrior sharpening his blade in the dark, he prepares to force the impossible to become reality. Dawn breaks, and after a sleepless night of grueling effort, a weary Dale marches back onto the training grounds. His exhaustion is palpable. Sophia has to call his name repeatedly, realizing the boy has sacrificed his rest to prove a point. The teacher worries he is pushing his body to the brink, but Dale stands tall, ready to show her the fruits of his labor. First, he resurrects the undead rabbit, instantly encasing it in a layer of frost armor. The Blue Tower Master watches, intrigued by his seamless control, but the atmosphere suddenly shifts. Dale triggers a reaction deep within the armored shell. The construct detonates, shards of ice explode outward, screaming through the air in every direction like lethal daggers. Sophia gasps in shock, but that was merely the opening act. The undead remains spew ominous violet fumes before pulsing with unstable energy. A second explosion rocks the field. Dark energy lashes out, propelling jagged ice bolts outward with terrifying velocity. Caught in the blast radius, Sophia instinctively erects a mana barrier to survive. When the smoke clears, her expression is frozen in disbelief. Unfazed by the destruction, Dale calmly reveals his masterpiece, the corpse ice explosion. He has successfully merged life and death. With a confident smirk, he asks if this display finally qualifies him as a true dual mage. The High Elf stands speechless. In all her centuries, she has never witnessed such a blasphemous yet brilliant combination. Ice and necromancy woven together into a trap of absolute devastation. The explosion was the bait, and the ice spikes were the executioner. A chill runs down Sophia's spine. She feels overwhelmed, as if she is standing before an entity with a singular, dark purpose: to slaughter. It is a technique designed for the battlefield. She shudders, unaware that she is sensing the ancient, blood-soaked instincts of Hanung living within the boy. Just then, the thundering of hooves breaks the tension. The young master spots Uncle Helmet arriving on horseback. He returns victorious from a dungeon raid, his squad battered but triumphant after culling a horde of monsters. Helmet praises the Black Cavalry for their assistance. These elite lancers radiate a suffocating dark aura that dominates the battlefield. They are known as the Iron Fist of the Saxon Duchy, the undisputed kings of mounted warfare. Leading them is Helmut himself, a living legend recognized as one of the 7 sword masters of the continent. Dale gazes up at him with reverence. Desperate for strength, he begs the sword saint to teach him the way of the blade. However, Helmut politely declines the request before departing. With the interruption over, Sophia suggests they conclude the training for the day. The scene shifts to the Duke's office later that night, where Sophia reports on Dale's breakthrough in dual casting. Lord Noir is stunned into silence upon learning that his son has successfully wielded the forbidden arts of necromancy. Lady Elena's eyes narrow in disappointment. Sophia had crossed a line, teaching the boy far more than the simple water magic she was assigned. The elf explains she could not stifle his potential. The young master's hunger for necromancy was too great to be contained. A heavy silence fills the room before the Duchess finally speaks. She stands firm against the dark arts, insisting Sophia focus solely on the water attribute. The Blue Tower Master bows, promising to guide him safely from now on. Guilt gnaws at Sophia. Before leaving, she turns to the Duke, apologizing for breaking their vow of secrecy regarding the boy's training. Once alone, Lady Elena exhales a shaky breath. Despite her fears, pride swells in her chest for her son's impossible genius. To her, it is only natural. He is their son, after all. Greatness flows through his veins. The Duke finally voices his inner conflict, defying his wife's hesitation. He reveals his intent to personally instruct Dale in necromancy. He sees the future, a successor who dominates both magic and authority, honed into the perfect heir. It is his birthright to bestow this power upon his son, even if it means breaking the promise he made to protect the boy's innocence. Elena counters with the harsh truth. Necromancy is a cursed path, despised by the world. She only wanted to shield her child from that hatred. But looking into her husband's eyes, she accepts the inevitable. The world's opinion no longer matters compared to her son's destiny. The Duke is left breathless by her resolve. Her strength effectively seals their son's fate. The decision is made. Dale's true training as a necromancer begins now. The Duke stared down with eyes full of crushing disappointment. Dale's control over the dark arts was pitiable at best, but his lack of skill was natural. Sophia's teachings had been rudimentary. Now, they stood in the heart of the castle's abyss, the secret underground magic workshop. Here, the patriarch intended to shatter his son's misconceptions and demonstrate the terrifying majesty of true necromancy. With a wave of his hand, tome after tome materialized. The first trial was not of power, but of the mind. To command the dead, one must first understand the living. Dale was forced to memorize the complex anatomy of every creature, devouring the knowledge like a man starving for power. Once the foundation was laid, the Duke signaled the beginning of the real training. Dale's eyes lit up, his soul yearned for the taste of practical magic. But his excitement wavered for a split second. Before him lay the cold, lifeless corpse of a goblin. The Duke sensed his hesitation. He explained that a true master of death does not simply raise corpses, they elevate them, turning fodder into elite death knights. This goblin was the test subject. The Duke watched silently, eager to see how his prodigy would manipulate the vessel. Dale focused, channeling dark mana into his fingertips, but immediately, he hit an invisible wall. Raising a small rabbit was child's play, but a goblin, its muscular structure required a complex web of mana strings far beyond a beginner's grasp. His initial link shattered instantly. Gritting his teeth, Dale forced the connection again, frantically weaving his mana threads to puppeteer the corpse. He shifted tactics, pouring more power in, yet the goblin remained as still as a stone statue. Just as despair began to set in, his father intervened. He praised the boy for inducing rigor mortis to stabilize the frame. However, the Duke pointed out the fatal flaw: a stiff body cannot move with the fluidity required for battle. Then, the master moved. Dark tendrils erupted from the Duke, bypassing the muscles and swarming the goblin's skeletal structure, targeting the ribs directly. In life, ribs protect the organs, but the dead have no need for a beating heart or lungs. With a sickening crack, the ribs twisted and extended, erupting from the arm to form a terrifying set of bone claws. This was the pinnacle of their art, not just reviving the dead, but reshaping them into weapons of war. Dale stared in absolute awe. Burning with ambition, he begged to learn the secrets of the Noir magic tower. The Duke smiled, seeing his own hunger reflected in his son's eyes, but his expression turned solemn. He revealed the ultimate truth: the essence of black magic is rooted deeply in death itself. To command death, one must understand the weight of life. These words triggered a violent memory, transporting Dale back to his past life as the tyrant Hansung. In that vision, his eyes glowed with crimson bloodlust. He stood over a begging foe, his blade descending without a shred of mercy, oblivious to the man's pleas. The Duke's voice sliced through the hallucination, pulling him back to the present. A shadow cast over Dale's face. He realized with chilling clarity that his soul was already stained by a path of carnage and blood. Yet, he quickly composed himself, wearing the mask of an innocent child before his father. Day by day, the young master's power grew. News of Duke Saxon personally training his son swept through the empire like a wild inferno. The fact that the Duke had broken his vow of secrecy drew the gaze of every noble house. All eyes were fixed on Dale, waiting for him to rise or fall. Weeks later, the scene shifted to the training grounds, where the boy clashed fiercely against his uncle. Sparks flew as steel met steel. Suddenly, Helmet unleashed a strike aimed dangerously close to the boy's head. Boom! With impossible speed, the boy parried the blow, the impact so violent it sent Helmet's weapon flying across the yard. The uncle stood stunned by the boy's strength, though Dale knew instantly that Helmet had held back. Helmet had disarmed himself on purpose. However, Dale realized he had instinctively used a lethal sword art, a technique meant for slaughter, not sparring. His hands throbbed, swollen and bruised, but the victory belonged to him. Helmet stared at him, bewildered. With such monstrous talent for the blade, why was the boy obsessed with becoming a mage? In this world, knights existed to shield mages. Helmet couldn't fathom the desperation driving Dale's ferocious training. A frown creased the uncle's brow. If the boy continued at this pace, he would shatter his own body before reaching adulthood. Bandaging his wounded hands, Dale answered with eyes full of fire. He refused to be a weakling who cowered behind guards for protection. But that was merely a convenient lie. The cunning regressor's true goal was to absorb his uncle's legendary sword mastery for himself. Helmet roared with laughter, pleased by the answer. Their moment of bonding, however, was interrupted by a gentle voice. Dale turned, surprised to see his mother standing at the edge of the training grounds. Duchess Elena had come to observe his growth, but she bore a mysterious smile. She asked if he remembered his birthday wish. For a moment, the boy was blank. Then, the memory struck him like lightning. He had demanded a younger sister. The Duke had evidently been busy fulfilling that request. Elena placed a hand on her stomach. A new life was growing within. Dale was overcome with euphoria. 10 months flew by in the blink of an eye, and there she was, looking down at the cradle. The young master could hardly believe he finally had a sibling to protect. Lady Elena gently offers the newborn to him, a gesture that leaves the boy frozen in shock. Dale accepts the burden with trembling hands, and miraculously, the infant ceases her crying the moment she settles in his embrace. Witnessing the young master cradle his precious sibling, the Duke speaks. "Feel that weight," his father commands. "That is the true heaviness of a life." This is what he must protect at all costs. But peace is fleeting. It is time for his next trial. We cut sharply to the training grounds. The Tower Master, Sophia, stands ready to teach him the art of real war. Dale hesitates, stunned that she demands a serious duel. The Blue Tower Master smiles coldly. "Come at me," she orders. "Do not hold back." Mana swirls as the young master manifests a magic circle. Sophia watches with predatory interest, eager to measure just how much the monster has grown. He wastes no time. A jagged bolt of ice screams toward her face. She swats it aside like a fly and shatters it. "Too slow," she scoffs. The second strike meets the same fate, and her eyes narrow in disdain. "Are you pitying me?" she demands. Dale freezes, realizing his hesitation has been laid bare. "Then let me show you reality," she whispers. A devastating strike flies at him. "Defend yourself." Panic surges as he barely erects a shield. A fraction of a second later, and that blow would have left him broken on the floor. She nods, satisfied by his reflex to conjure instant ice armor. That survival instinct saved him, but now she demands more. "Come at me with full speed." Dale slams his palm against the earth. He rewrites the very molecular structure of the water in the air, causing a massive wall of ice to erupt. The towering monolith looms over them. Sophia pauses, baffled by this defensive tactic in an offensive duel. One glance tells her everything. The density is absurd. It is nearly indestructible. But why? Why cast a defensive wall when he needs to land a hit? Is he stalling for mana recovery? She suspects the young master is merely buying time. But she is dead wrong. The mana shifts. The solid ice fractures internally, forming a complex honeycomb lattice. Defense was never the goal, only destruction. "Detonate," he whispers. The wall obliterates directly in Sophia's face. Shards of ice scatter like diamond dust. The young master is certain he has landed a critical blow. He condensed the density to its limit, only to force a violent expansion, an unavoidable, omnidirectional blast. The smoke clears. Dale's blood runs cold. Before him lies the shocking sight of his master's mangled corpse. But the image flickers. The real Sophia steps out from behind the broken ice statue, perfectly alive. Dale collapses with relief. He truly believed he had committed murder. It was nothing but a high-tier illusion. "Impressive," she remarks, her voice filled with genuine praise. Though she blocked it, a thin line of blood trickles down her cheek. A mere first circle mage managed to wound a tower master. It is unheard of. Dale stammers an apology for the wound, but Sophia is grinning. The blood proves he trusted her strength enough to try and kill her. She wipes the scratch away. "You are an excellent student," she declares. To invent such a complex spell formula on the fly, it defies all magical logic. Dale bows humbly, giving her the credit. Meanwhile, Sophia laughs, unbothered by her near-death experience. Later, the mood shifts to heavy silence in the office. Even the Duke notices the mark. "Who dared to wound you?" he asks. "My own arrogance," Sophia replies. "I underestimated the strike." Duke Saxon nods at her warrior spirit, but Sophia is simply reveling in Dale's potential. Then, the Duke drops a new directive. "The barrier has been breached," he announces. A horde of orcs swarms the mountain range. For the cavalry, it is a routine purge, but the Duke's plan is far from routine. He intends to deploy his son, a 10-year-old child thrown into the jaws of war. Sophia protests immediately. He is not ready for slaughter. Peace, the Duke interrupts. He will not stand on the front lines. His duty is to protect the rear. The Duke explains. He must learn the burden of House Saxon. Dark energy rolls off the Duke, suffocating the room. He will forge his son in fire. Sophia bows, understanding there is no room for argument. He requires power. The Duke states, grant him access to the vault. Sophia must teach him to wield a relic of ancient blood. Now, let us speak of artifacts. The crystallized remnants of ancient magic. They slumber until awakened by mana. Or for the desperate, a tribute of flesh and blood. The greater the power, the heavier the curse. To wield one is to dance with death itself. And the Saxon vault holds the deadliest of them all. The young heir descends into the darkness. His first real war awaits. The revelation ignites a fire in the boy's eyes, thrilled that the moment has finally arrived to test his steel in the fires of true combat. Duke Saxon unveils his grand ambition to lead an elite subjugation squad and purge the land of the Orc horde once and for all. But before he can march into the abyss, the boy must first master the darkness itself. Before him stand 3 ancient relics, pulsating with raw, untamed power. These are no mere trinkets. The Saxon treasury houses the spoils of a legendary conquest, artifacts torn from the very grasp of the Demon King himself. Their power defies logic, radiating a mana flow so dense and overwhelming that it dwarfs ordinary magical items. The Duke's voice drops to a grave warning. Their immense power is a double-edged sword, and they are as deadly to the wielder as they are to the enemy. Absolute dominance is required before even touching them, but Dale isn't interested in lectures. Without a backward glance, he steps forward, leaving his father's caution in the dust. He vanishes into the treasury's depths, leaving the Duke blinking in disbelief as he scans the room for his wayward son. Deep in the shadows, Dale hunts for his destined weapon. Suddenly, a resonance hums through the air. An artifact calls to him, sensing the burning need for vengeance that rots in the young master's soul. This murderous relic whispers promises of slaughter. And it is not alone. A chorus of dark voices rises, seducing him with the allure of absolute power. Dale realizes the truth. These artifacts recognize the aura of Hansung flowing through his veins. However, he refuses to be swayed by their siren songs alone. He demands a weapon that grants supremacy, seeking something far deadlier. His eyes lock onto a singular item, a cloak shrouded in eternal night. This is the Shadow Cloak, a relic steeped in a history of blood and terror. In the era of Hansung, this pinnacle tier artifact was wielded by one of the Demon King's own dukes, a testament to its catastrophic potential. With the terrifying ability to manifest living shadows, it was once a nightmare on the battlefield, making its wielder nearly invincible. Compelled by fate, the young master throws the cloak over his shoulders. Sophia and his father realize the danger too late, their screams echoing in the vast hall. Darkness instantly swallows him whole. The cloak drags his consciousness into a chaotic dimension, drowning him in its bottomless, ravenous hunger. The previous master commanded storms of shadow, bending the very essence of darkness to his whim. But power must be earned. To wield this artifact, Dale must face the entity dwelling within and crush it into submission. The dark entity manifests as a legion of obsidian beasts, surging forward to break the boy's spirit and enslave his soul. Dale stands alone in the abyss, cut off from the world. No ally can save him from this nightmare. It is a sealed dimension of despair. Outside, Sophia trembles with dread, and even the Duke admits the grim reality his son is on the brink of being devoured. The situation turns critical. Unwilling to watch his son die, the Duke prepares to tear the barrier apart by force. Suddenly, a blinding radiance shatters the darkness, the shadows recede, and Dale steps forth unharmed, the shadow cloak now draped around him like a mantle of royalty. The Blue Tower Master rushes forward, scanning his vitals with frantic urgency. Miraculously, he is unscathed. This impossibility chills Duke Saxon to the bone. How could a mere child endure the crushing burden of such a calamitous artifact? With an innocent smile masking his terrifying potential, the young master turns to his father. High on the thrill of conquest, he demands access to the rest of the treasury. He intends to tame every single cursed artifact, a request bordering on madness. Yet, seeing the glint in his son's eyes, the Duke relents. And so begins the young master's relentless crusade to subjugate the family's entire dark arsenal. Days turn into nights as the young master pushes his training beyond human limits. Helmet stands paralyzed with awe, witnessing the boy draped in the majestic, swirling shadows of the cloak. He cannot comprehend it. A child controlling a legendary artifact of darkness with such casual ease, it defies all common sense. Dale shrugs it off, admitting only to a slight tingling sensation. The overwhelming power of the abyss, he has it on a leash. The young master understands the truth the artifact has starved for a worthy master, and in him, it has finally found its king. Where others see a monster to be feared, Dale sees a tool to be negotiated with. Conversing with the darkness as if it were an old friend. Helmet questions the boy's sanity, but Dale proves his dominance instantly. He crushes the shadow beneath his boot, humbling the entity's ego with ruthless authority. But mere training is no longer enough. The kid has a demand. Dale demands a real duel, his blood boiling with anticipation. The swordmaster draws his colossal blade, eager to see what the prodigy is truly capable of. However, as the killing intent floods the room, realization hits Dale like a freight train. He may have bitten off more than he can chew. Standing before one of the era's greatest swordmasters, the gap in their strength is terrifyingly clear. The knight assures him there is no need for fear, though the pressure alone is enough to crush a normal man. Fortunately, Helmet vows to limit himself to basic swordsmanship, a mercy the boy desperately needs. Dale steels himself. He knows that a knight's blade, even when restrained, carries the weight of 1,000 battles. But victory isn't the goal. Dale plans to use this deadly dance to unleash the full, terrifying potential of the shadow cloak. Channeling the abyss, Dale commands the darkness to take shape. The shadows writhe and twist, birthing nightmare creatures at his fingertips. He launches his offensive Shadow Blade rush. Tendrils of pure darkness erupt from the ground, surging toward his opponent with predatory speed. With a single, devastating slash, the fierce knight obliterates the encroaching darkness. The sheer power of the blow leaves the young master stunned. Helmet offers a brief word of praise before launching a ferocious counteroffensive. In a heartbeat, he closes the distance. Dale reacts instantly, flooding the ground with abyssal shadows to snare his opponent. The darkened earth screams as lethal spikes erupt from below, aiming to impale the knight. Caught off guard, perhaps, but with a roar of pure aura, the knight shatters the shadow technique through brute force alone. Backed into a corner, Dale activates a unique skill to deflect the incoming onslaught. The knight's eyes widen. That blow would have pulverized a lesser weapon instantly. It seems this duel is teaching him the terrifying durability of a top-grade artifact. A feral grin spreads across Helmet's face. He is ready to trade at least 10 more blows of that magnitude. As the young master clashes with the veteran hero, the Black Cavalry watches in stunned silence. Even the elite soldiers among them crumble before 10 strikes from their captain. Yet here stands a 10-year-old child, defying all logic. Days fly by, and the night of destiny finally arrives. Before the march, Lady Elena approaches her son, her face a mask of worry. She pleads for him to stay, but Dale grips her hands. He assures her that with Helmet by his side, he is untouchable. A mother's heart fears the battlefield, but Dale stands firm. He must grow strong enough to bear the weight of the dukedom his father commands. To shield his family from the coming storms, he must shed his sweat and blood now. He gazes into her eyes, begging her to trust in his strength and let him shoulder this burden. His unwavering resolve melts her resistance, and she finally grants her blessing. Watching him mount his steed, she prays. The scene shifts to the tension of the forward operating base. Helmet has the troops fully geared up. The air crackles with anticipation. The Duke steps forward with a shocking command. Dale is to lead the march. These men will one day bow to him alone. From this moment forth, they are his blade and his shield. Something shifts within his soul. He is no longer Hansung the hero. He is Dale, commander of the Black Cavalry. Fate will change this time. Taking the reins, the young commander addresses his valiant warriors. He thrusts his hand toward the heavens and roars the battle cry of House Saxon. The earth rumbles as they move out. 250 steel-clad men and the elite ranger unit advance. Their target, a horde of nearly 1,000 orcs, fleeing the cold mountains toward the river. The Black Cavalry plans to strike first, crossing the lower river to launch a devastating ambush. But nature stands in their way. The river runs deep and wild. Ordinary men would falter, but the ethereal blue elf steps forward, weaving a bridge of solid ice. Dale smiles. Despite her pacifist heart, She stands ready to aid their cause. Her magic paves the way for the army. Her role ends here, leaving them with a prayer for victory. As Dale bids her farewell, Sophia watches his retreating back, her heart stirred by his courage. Worry clouds her eyes, but the wheels of war are turning. We cut to the orc encampment. The hunters have arrived. Bowstrings are drawn, fiery tips glowing in the twilight. Loose, a rain of fire descends, and dozens of monsters drop before they even know they are under attack. As the beasts howl in rage, Helmet commands the wedge formation. The charge begins while the Duke observes Dale's reaction. Dale's sharp eyes analyze the battlefield. The cavalry is thundering forward at 40 kilometers per hour. This is the Call Lance formation, supercharged by the explosive aura of every single knight. It is a wave of destruction. Dale realizes with awe that this is not a battle. It is a slaughter. The Duke nods at their might, but Helmet's voice cuts through the noise. Focus. Victory is not yet theirs. The true battle has only just begun. The orcs are not mindless beasts. They form a defensive wedge, locking shields to absorb the impact. The commander realizes the grim truth. This initial ambush will not be enough to break them. They must retreat and regroup. The strategy shifts to a secondary charge to whittle down the horde. A blinding flare ascends to the heavens, signaling the knights to withdraw immediately. The very vanguard that was slaughtering the orcs suddenly turns their backs on the enemy. This sudden retreat leaves the monsters completely stunned by the turn of events. Seizing this golden opportunity, the beasts raise their spears, taking aim at the exposed backs of the retreating knights. Disaster strikes. Their aim is terrifyingly precise, and a jagged spear pierces a warhorse, bringing it crashing to the earth in an instant. This moment is pivotal for Dale, who watches in horror as an ally falls. Yet, the veterans behind him, hardened experts of war, have already deemed the fallen soldier a corpse. The defenseless knight lies paralyzed on the ground, watching helplessly as a massive orc prepares to deliver the killing blow. Fury ignites in the young master's eyes. He glares at the adults, silently screaming at their cold refusal to intervene. The two commanders remain silent, offering no defense for their ruthless pragmatism. Death is mere seconds away for the fallen knight, and Dale realizes his horse is too slow to bridge the gap in time. He shifts his focus inward. He must channel his mana to snipe the enemy from a distance using a unique ability. However, an orc's hide is incredibly thick. To penetrate that natural armor, Dale decides to modify the standard Ice Bolt formula, visualizing the mechanics of a modern bullet. His mind races, calculating the perfect trajectory needed to guide this lethal projectile. With the fundamentals locked in, the prodigy compresses his magic. He structures the Ice Bolt to mimic the devastating power of a Barrett M98B sniper rifle. He points a finger at the behemoth and fires. The projectile moves at supersonic speed, piercing the orc's flank with a thunderous impact. The Duke watches in fascination, while Commander Helmet is left awestruck by the boy's flawless aim. Seizing the momentum, Dale spurs his horse and charges recklessly into the heart of the battlefield. The Duke makes no move to stop him. Instead, pride swells within his chest. He is stunned that his son has created a unique magic formula with such catastrophic destructive power. It is proof that Dale's inner mana circles are nearing their completion cycle. As our young hero rushes in, he notices the orcs shifting their formation. They are regrouping for a tactical counterattack. Dale is determined to save his subordinate, but he faces two critical obstacles. The first is manageable, but the second problem, the casting time of his original combat formula, is far too slow for close quarters battle. He recalls how complex mathematical equations can be simplified for efficiency, just like the basic formulas displayed here. Applying this logic to magic, Dale intends to compress his incantation. This time, he draws inspiration from the Ice 98 Magnum rather than the heavy anti-material rifle. Although the formula still appears lengthy, the devious young master is trembling with excitement to test his theory. Unleashing his ice magic once more, he takes aim and absolutely obliterates the orc's head with a condensed ice bullet. The piercing round executes the beast instantly. The helpless knight stares up in shock, unable to comprehend why a noble would risk his life for a mere soldier. Dale dismounts, his presence calming the terrified man, assuring him that he is now under his protection. He declares that he will never be the kind of leader who abandons those who serve him. That act of mercy is a direct challenge to the cold philosophy of his father and uncle. But he must back up those words, for two more hideous beasts are closing in fast. Ice will not suffice. The boy commands the shadows themselves, flooding the arena with distinct slashes of pitch-black darkness. This is the Shadow Blade. It acts as a domain of death that severs everything within range, reminiscent of a certain malevolent shrine. Heads fly into the air as a cloaked entity emerges from the abyss to devour the remains. The shadow beast consumes them with the voracious hunger of a predator, leaving nothing but bleached bones. The final orc freezes in sheer terror, realizing its fate is sealed. Dale scoffs at the monster's cowardice before massacring it with a final ice bullet. The threat has been neutralized. However, despite the rescue, the knight's legs are shattered, rendering him unable to walk. It seems likely this soldier will be discharged, but our boy lifts him up with a heroic carry, returning to the lines with flying colors. Inspired by this display, Commander Helmet eagerly leads the full charge upon the young master's return. The forces of House Saxon are ignited with new morale after witnessing their future liege's epic display of valor. The narrative jumps forward. The knights have completely annihilated the orc fleet off screen. The mission is a success, but the Duke has personal matters to settle with his son. His tone is grave. He demands to know why Dale rushed into the jaws of death so recklessly. The Duke's expression is darker than ever before, and the young master realizes this is a genuine scolding from the patriarch. Confidently, Dale reminds his father of the Duke's own proclamation that Dale would one day lead the cavalry. He claims his actions were merely fitting for that future role, but the Duke instantly dismisses this as a weak justification. It is a startling realization for the young master, who knows that deep down, his father cherishes his soldiers. Dale counters with a piercing question. Why did the Duke stand idly by while his own people face slaughter? The Duke's voice is cold as iron as he lectures the knights. He explains that those who step onto the battlefield have already accepted death. They do not fight expecting salvation. Yet, the boy stubbornly argues that every life is worth the risk. Fury flashes in the Duke's eyes. He scolds his son, warning that his reckless heroism has birthed a dangerous poisoned false hope. By saving one, he has endangered the many. Now, the rest of the knights will fight with a fatal weakness, believing that someone will always be there to pull them from the jaws of death. The logic strikes with the force of a warhammer. It is a devastating truth that echoes in Dale's mind, shattering his naive idealism. The Duke poses a chilling question with such a fragile mindset. How many souls can the boy truly save before his own strength fails him? Dale stands frozen, unable to speak. Duke Saxon drives the lesson home. He only intervenes when his warriors have truly reached their absolute limits. That is the hard law of the battlefield. It is the highest form of respect a commander can offer to the resolve of his soldiers. The patriarch's words cut deep because they are irrefutable. In his previous life as Hansung, he had learned this bitter truth in blood, yet somewhere along the way, he had forgotten the weight of command. Seeing the lesson has landed, the Duke's demeanor softens. He places a hand on his son's shoulder, expressing immense pride in Dale's warrior spirit. He vows to help him temper that spirit, turning it into a blade that will not break in the wars to come. With the lecture concluded, the subjugation mission is declared a complete victory, and the Legion begins their triumphant march back to the castle. However, legends have a way of outrunning the truth. Whispers of a young lord charging into hell to save a single knight spread through the kingdom like wildfire. The rumors spiral into myth. The common folk now believe Dale slaughtered 1,000 orcs single-handedly in a display of godlike power. Dale hangs his head in shame as he walks among the cheering crowds, but seeing the joy on the faces of his people brings a small warmth to his heart. Days turn into weeks as Dale returns to the grind, his sweat soaking the floor of the training arena. When the knights spot their young savior, a roar of approval erupts. They sing his praises, turning the young master's face a deep shade of crimson. Helmet laughs heartily, urging the boy to embrace the glory. Together, they raise their fists, their spirits burning with the desire to surpass their limits. Just as the atmosphere peaks with camaraderie, a maid arrives with urgent news. Guests from the prestigious House Orheart have crossed the threshold. Dale's eyes light up with anticipation. The martial House Orheart is a name etched in history, founded by Bardel, the legendary divine sword. But tragedy haunts that lineage. When the Unification War began, the patriarch Bardel and his house were swept away by the tides of destruction. Dale notices a shadow of grief cross Helmet's face. The connection is personal and deep. It was the divine sword himself who had guided his uncle down the path of chivalry, teaching him the way of the blade. As they approach the throne room, The young master understands the heavy heart his uncle must be carrying. Inside, the Duke commends his son's diligence. The doors open, and Lady Vanessa Orheart enters with grace, her daughter walking beside her. There is no entourage, only a mother and child. Vanessa bows with deep respect, but her daughter radiates a terrifying hostility. The girl looks ready to tear the world apart, her eyes burning with a rage that seems far too heavy for her age. Then, the unthinkable happens. Charlotte lashes out, her voice dripping with venom as she demands to know why her mother bows to these people. It is a grave insult, the height of disrespect. Yet, Duke Saxon remains unmoved, his dignity unshaken like a mountain in a storm. Instead of punishment, he calmly instructs Dale to escort the young lady around the castle grounds, hoping to diffuse the tension. Our hero extends a hand of friendship, but Charlotte slaps it away with full force. The sound echoes, and Dale's palm instantly swells, turning an angry red. The air in the room freezes. Duke Saxon's aura darkens dangerously, and Lady Elena gasps in horror as the gravity of the girl's action sinks in. But the child does not cower. She spits insults, calling them shameless nobles, digging her own grave deeper with every word. Vanessa's voice trembles as she demands an apology, but Charlotte turns and flees, storming out of the chamber in a blind rage. Left behind, the mother stands amidst the ruins of her dignity, desperately trying to salvage the situation after such a display of blatant disrespect. Lady Elena gently asks what could drive a child to such madness. The truth is a nightmare involving Count Brandenburg. This man, revered as the Empire's holy knight, carries a darker title in the shadows. He's a predator known as the Pig King. He is a wretched creature, obsessed with breeding a perfect heir by forcing himself upon skilled swordswomen against their will. And now, his vile gaze has fallen upon a new target. It is Charlotte. Though she is merely a child, the monster's obsession knows no bounds. He is a demon in human skin. Vanessa reveals the harrowing truth: this unholy knight had once tried to claim her as well. The poor girl is traumatized, living in constant terror. As a fallen noble house eradicated by war, Vanessa has no power to fight back. She has come to Duke Saxon not as an equal, but to beg. She offers herself as a mere maid, desperate for the shield of the Saxon name to keep that filth away from her daughter. Outside, amidst the training dummies, Dale finds the girl trembling, her emotions in turmoil. He approaches her not with anger, but with a calm, steady presence. His lack of malice disarms her defenses completely. Slowly, the fire in her eyes dims. She quietly asks about his injured hand, and Dale realizes he is not dealing with an enemy, but a frightened child. With steel ringing out, she unsheathes her blade in a flash, pointing the sharp tip directly at his throat and demanding a duel. This sudden provocation catches him completely off guard, realizing that this child fears absolutely nothing under the heavens. She moves solely on her own whims, but the young master sees no benefit in engaging in such a pointless clash. Yet, her eyes burn with ambition, for she has heard the legends of the one who saved the Princess Knight and massacred 1,000 orcs alone. She craves the sweet taste of victory against a monster like him, desperate to claim the title of the Empire's strongest for herself. It is the only way to prove her worth and show the world that her family needs no aid from the treacherous Count Brandenburg. The moment that cursed name hits Dale's ears, his expression darkens into a mask of pure fury. How could he ever forget that traitor? That man is the very snake who betrayed him and ended his previous life. Realizing the girl shares his hatred, a path to a powerful alliance opens up. But before he can accept her hand, he must first crush her arrogance and show her the harsh reality of true strength. He casually grabs a dull short blade from a barrel, mocking Charlotte by treating her like a petulant child throwing a tantrum. The insult strikes a nerve. Her killing intent spikes as she prepares to unleash every ounce of her power against him. Charlotte explodes forward with blinding speed, but her ferocious strike meets the immovable wall of Dale's defense. She unleashes a storm of thrusts, burning through her stamina. Meanwhile, Dale calmly dissects her patterns, searching for the flaws in her technique. Her deflection skills are sublime, and her wrist flexibility allows for reflexes that defy normal logic. Her potential is terrifying. A visible trail of aura begins to manifest, trailing behind her blade like a comet. Though the rapier is too large for her small frame, her aura compensates for the weight, Unlike mages who cycle mana near the heart, knights operate differently. They channel aura directly into their muscles, exploding their physical limits to superhuman levels. Charlotte forces her body beyond its breaking point to overwhelm him. Her raw talent as a genius knight is undeniable. She executes a lethal strike that actually grazes Dale. Confidence surges through her veins as she believes victory is within her grasp. But let us look into the shadows of her past. She was born into tragedy, her father dying moments after she took her first breath. Her mother, Vanessa, raised her on legends, whispering tales of her father's heroic deeds as if they were scriptures. She was molded to be the successor of the almighty divine sword. Thus, she abandoned her childhood to train until her hands bled. Even when her family name fell into ruin and despair, her blade never wavered, and her resolve never cracked. Yet against Dale, her resolve is meaningless. His impenetrable defense mocks her effort, forcing her to overextend in a moment of desperate rage. Seizing the opening, the young master strikes. Her weapon goes flying into the sky, and silence falls over the training grounds. The proud daughter of the divine sword has tasted the bitter ash of her very first defeat. As she weeps in confusion and shame, the boy stands over her, ready to carve a painful lesson into her soul. She is merely a ghost chasing her father's shadow. Dale ruthlessly shatters her delusion, exposing just how fragile her current strength truly is. If she cannot beat Dale, she is hopeless. Count Brandenburg is a monster far stronger than even Dale is right now. Broken and directionless, Charlotte looks up with teary eyes, begging for a path forward. Dale steps forward as the shield of House Orheart. He vows that House Saxon will harbor her until her blade is sharp enough to cut down Brandenburg herself. Charlotte is stunned. She cannot comprehend why a stranger would offer such salvation. The young master smiles. She is a diamond in the rough, worthy of protection if she swears her eternal loyalty to his banner. She wipes away her tears and steel enters her eyes. Kneeling before her liege, she pledges her life and sword to his service. It sounds like a child's fantasy, but Dale feels the weight of destiny in her voice. Her resolve is absolute. Later, our protagonist approaches his father to officially report Charlotte's induction into their household. The Duke is taken aback. The wild child has transformed into a disciplined servant in the blink of an eye. Dale reveals the pact forged in steel, a sacred vow to restore the honor of House Orheart. The Duke scoffs, suspecting charity, but the young master denies acting on pity. This is a calculated investment in power. He intends to harvest the unparalleled talent hidden within the divine sword's legacy. That oath will forge a weapon that will one day serve as the strongest pillar of their family. The Duke can only smile, impressed by his son's foresight. Dale smirks. He has gained a powerful future ally, and simultaneously dealt a blow to that wretched Count's pride. Speaking of the devil, far away in Malberg, the Count is screaming in incoherent rage as the news reaches his ears. The corrupted knight cannot believe his incompetent subordinates failed to capture a single little girl. His assassins were slaughtered before they could even breach House Saxon's territory. He realizes with a shudder, Charlotte must have eliminated them all herself. Rage consumed Count Brandenburg as his hand flew to the hilt of his sword. Caressing the cold steel, he relived the twisted ecstasy of betraying Han Sung on the battlefield like a true psychopath. His obsession was palpable, treating the weapon not as a tool, but as a lover he coveted with a sickening hunger. Honestly, his fixation is so grotesque, he might as well be married to the blade itself. He is consumed by a singular, maddening desire to ensure this cursed legacy is passed down to a competent heir. The Count commands his servant to contact the Thieves' Guild, flooding House Saxon's territory with mercenaries. He is prepared to spend a fortune, piling gold mountains high just to capture Charlotte. 1 week has passed since Charlotte swore her blood oath of servitude. She endured hellish training to become a proper maid, but her true test lay elsewhere. She clashed against our boy, honing her body for the art of war. Master Helmet watched their sparring match intensely. Dale wielded a short sword, launching a relentless offensive that forced her into a desperate defense. The swordmaster saw her crumbling under the pressure, yet he remained silent, awestruck by the spectacle. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine two mere children could produce a duel of such ferocity. They lacked the polish of knights, but their killing intent was palpable, matching their lightning-fast reflexes. Suddenly, the young master grips his cloak, concealing his blade. It is an unorthodox feint, a move that catches Charlotte completely off guard. She lunges for a lethal strike, but Helmet flashes between them, halting the death match. Though the knight praises her spirit, Charlotte rejects the hollow words, demanding the harsh truth instead. Helmet begins the lecture with a critical question: does the young lady truly understand the soul of her weapon? Until now, she relied solely on thrusting power, but the rapier's true lethality lies in the mastery of footwork. Dale had been outmaneuvering her, closing the gap while effortlessly dodging her strikes. The moment she felt the pressure mounting, Charlotte should have retreated to maintain her lethal range. The fatal flaw of a rapier is simple: once the enemy breaches your guard, precision vanishes instantly. Based on this performance, Helmet delivers the brutal verdict: Charlotte must tear down her fighting style and rebuild it from zero. Her stance is riddled with fatal openings. The girl pouts in frustration. Without a master to guide her, she has been stumbling in the dark. Helmet even teases her, calling her technique a rather bizarre way of thrusting. Charlotte burns with humiliation as he laughs, though he assures her it is merely a teacher's tough love. Meanwhile, our protagonist watches on, calculating just how terrifying she will become under the tutelage of a legendary swordmaster. He realizes that, one day, Charlotte might just possess the power to surpass him completely. The scene shifts, diving deep into the realm of magic training. Dale understands the fundamental law constructing mana circles follows a universal principle. However, a massive obstacle remains. Accumulating mana usually takes decades of agonizing effort, yet Sophia is left trembling. The prodigious young master has already completed his second circle. In this world, the power of a circle is measured by RPM, rotations per minute. An average mage spins at 300, but our boy is an anomaly. His first circle roars at 2,000, and his second already clocks in at 400. Since a new circle demands only 300, Dale has effectively shattered the barrier to the third circle already. Eager to test his evolved power, the young master conjures his signature technique, the Ice Bullet. First, he condenses the mana, increasing the projectile's density to diamond-like hardness. Locking onto a distant tree, he accelerates the bullet's rotation, turning it into a supersonic drill. Lo and behold, the first armor-piercing round fires with such devastation that it obliterates the tree instantly. The young master is stunned by his own destructive potential, finding the control effortless. Sophia beams with pride, though Dale humbly attributes his success to her guidance. She marvels at this boy, a walking miracle who wields godlike power yet always uses it for the righteous cause. Though his rapid growth terrifies her to some extent, in the end, Sophia's heart is filled with trust. Overwhelmed with emotion, she embraces him, accepting him as her proudest student. Dale stiffens, finding the affection uncomfortable. After all, he possesses the soul of a grown man from his past life. Later, the memory lingers. The memory. He cannot help but wonder if Sophia truly sees him as nothing more than a child to be coddled. But that is the logical conclusion. Shaking off these distracting thoughts, the young master returns his focus to the grind. Channeling the iconic command, "Arise," he summons a massive wall of ice. To test its durability, he unleashes a shotgun-style barrage of glacial bullets. The projectiles slam into the barrier and ricochet harmlessly, returning to their creator. With his absolute defense confirmed, the young master muses about developing a slugshot variation next. Suddenly, Charlotte emerges from the forest shadows. She has been searching for him after practicing her new footwork under Helmet's watch. Dale can see the spark of joy in her eyes when she holds a sword, but Charlotte has come to him for a far more serious reason. With crimson painting her cheeks, she bows her head, stammering out an apology for her past transgressions. She expected a rebuke, but instead of offering hollow comfort, the main character agrees she was acting like a spoiled brat, utterly shattering her pride. Yet, in the same breath, he accepts her apology. He simply asks that she drop the stiff formalities and treat him as an equal. Moments later, the tension dissolves. Charlotte speaks passionately about the winds of the training grounds, her eyes lighting up. A rare warmth spreads through Dale's chest. Finally, he has found a kindred spirit who understands the warrior's path. Meanwhile, the Duke and Duchess watch from a distance, already imagining wedding bells for the young couple. Lady Elena smiles from the shadows. She plans to gently nudge the wheels of fate to help her son realize his own heart. The scene shifts to the fringe of the domain. Elena teaches her son the heavy weight of noblesse oblige. Every week, she brings salvation to the destitute, and now Dale and Charlotte have joined this crusade of kindness. Suddenly, A child with tear-filled eyes stumbles forward. He pleads for Charlotte to save his mother from impending doom. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Dale's instincts scream of danger. He knows this is a setup. They stand unguarded, without a single knight, in an alleyway that reeks of malice. It is too suspicious. The boy refused adult help and specifically targeted Charlotte. Dale scans the perimeter with cold precision. High above, a shadow lurks on the rooftop. It is an assassin. Dale realizes they are already encircled by the Brandenburg dogs. The weeping child suddenly drops the act. His mission is complete. He vanishes into the gloom, and a squad of armed thugs emerges to seize the girl. Their eyes are locked only on Charlotte, but the young master stands his ground, ready to unleash hell. The green-haired villain threatens him with death, but Dale vows to protect the daughter of House Orheart. Looking at these vermin like trash, the bandit leader mocks his childish chivalry. He steps back, letting his minions educate the arrogant noble brat. They believe Dale needs a taste of true despair to understand how the real world works. Charlotte trembles, unarmed and terrified. But Dale remains calm amidst the rising storm, assuring her that he has total control. In truth, this is the perfect testing ground. It is time to unleash the newest technique of his top-grade artifact. 4 enemies lunge at once. But before their blades can touch him, darkness erupts. Black tendrils explode from the ground, wrapping around their bodies. They slash wildly, but their steel cuts nothing but abyssal fog. Dale watches with the cold eyes of a predator. Only the bandit leader senses the mana fluctuation. He roars at his incompetent fools to dodge. But it is too late. Dale acknowledges the leader's sharp instincts. The thugs try to flee, but one is too slow and gets reduced to gore instantly. This is the terrifying power Dale unlocked upon reaching the second circle. He summons parasitical shadows, living darkness that moves on its own to corrupt victims from within. The trapped thug is literally consumed. His life force is drained until he transforms into a creature of the void. This beast is a nightmare made flesh. It stands massive and hulking, far more terrifying than any natural beast. The undead monster hungers for fresh meat. The remaining bandits are paralyzed by sheer horror. Desperate, the leader sends his men as fodder to slow down the beast. He believes a single strike to the noble brat will end the summon. He closes the distance in a flash. He weaves around, trying to intimidate the boy with flashy movements. He flings his daggers with lethal precision, but Dale casually blocks them and counters with a burst of magic like a shotgun blast. The bandit's body is riddled with holes, turning him into a sieve of flesh. Charlotte watches in awe as Dale dominates the battlefield. His pet monster continues to massacre the remaining amateurs. However, the leader survives the first blast thanks to a thick layer of aura, but his luck is about to run out. Thinking he still has a chance, the fool rushes to his doom. The result is catastrophic. He is bisected instantly. Dale walks past the corpse as his new pet begins to feast upon the remains. The boy turns to Charlotte, checking if she is unharmed. Only one thug remains alive amidst the carnage. Even while comforting Charlotte, Dale raises a hand. He fires a spear of frost, severing the survivor's leg cleanly from his body. That man will never walk again. He is crippled for eternity. The terrified survivor begs to bargain with information, but Dale is a merciless monarch. He puts a magic bullet through the man's skull without blinking. He handles the threat with brutal efficiency. The young master stares at the bodies. These are the enemies of his house, and they have chosen death. However, he gazes into her eyes, swearing a solemn oath to shield Charlotte from all harm, and gently asks if fear still grips her heart. Though she admits the terror still lingers, a warmth blooms within her. She is overjoyed that the young master fought through hell just to keep her safe. Ever since that blood-sworn vow, her resolve has hardened like steel. She yearns to defend his lineage with the same ferocity he showed for hers. A burning desire ignites within Charlotte to surpass her limits for the sake of her savior. Her declaration leaves him stunned into silence. You see, the true reason he took her in is tethered to a catastrophic future, a nightmare from 24 years past that still haunts him. Hansung once stood helpless as her father met his tragic end. Now, in this new life, he defies destiny to rewrite history by keeping her close. Charlotte grasps his hand, sealing a bond far more profound than Dale ever anticipated. The threads of fate bind them tighter than ever. Meanwhile, Count Brandenburg is consumed by rage. The news of his failure boils his blood, leaving him seething with malice. A summons arrives from Duke Saxon himself, a chilling invitation. The subtext is clear. The Duke sees right through the scumbag's treacherous plots. Even with the title of Divine Sword, Brandenburg knows he is cornered. To refuse a predator like the Duke is to sign his own death warrant. Time flows on, and soon the looming spires of the castle dominate the horizon. Brandenburg arrives, masking his dread behind a grimace. Duke Saxon greets him with a taunting hospitality that chills the very air. The so-called Holy Sword forces a smile, feigning honor as he claims it is a privilege to stand within these walls. Yet, seeing Charlotte and Dale alive makes his blood boil. He attempts to seize control, bringing up the recent kidnapping incident with feigned concern. He laughs dismissively, treating the assassination attempt as a mere jest, boldly claiming his innocence in the face of the truth. The era's strongest necromancer responds not with words, but with a suffocating wave of abyssal mana. The crushing aura brings the Holy Knight and his retinue to their knees. Only his legendary blade allows him to withstand the Duke's wrath. But his subordinates are not so lucky. They disintegrate instantly, turned to ash in a gruesome display of absolute power. Count Brandenburg stares in horror at the abyss before him. Terror grips his soul as he realizes he has tempted fate far too many times and is about to pay the price. Duke Saxon's high-tier dark magic erased elite knights from existence in a single breath. The Holy Sword abandons all pride, begging for his life, but the Duke's command is absolute: kneel. Brandenburg attempts to reason, citing political fallout, but Dale's father is beyond logic. His fury is a storm, and he demands total submission. Mana crackles around the Duke's fingertips. One more word of defiance, and the Count joins his men in oblivion. Crushed by the sheer weight of the Duke's killing intent, the Holy Sword's legs finally give out. He never imagined such humiliation. Like a disciplined dog, he prostrates himself before the Duke, who offers this mercy as the only price for peace. But the warning is clear: touch a single hair on the children of House Saxon again, and his entire bloodline will be extinguished. After delivering such a thorough psychological execution and humiliation, the Duke coldly suggests Brandenburg take a moment to recover. The Holy Knight rejects the offer, desperate to escape this suffocating domain. He claims urgent business calls him away. As the pathetic knight flees in disgrace, the Duke watches on, beside him. Dale wears a grin that stretches from ear to ear. Watching his father crush that scumbag's ego is pure bliss. Yet, this very moment sets in motion a butterfly effect that will shake the Empire. A spark has been struck today. Soon, it will roar into an inferno that consumes everything in its path. In the timeline of destiny, an older, battle-hardened Dale is fated to clash with and defeat this very holy swordsman. The rumors of the Holy Sword bowing to the Duke of Noir will shatter the world's balance. Suddenly, Dale's father reveals the grim aftermath. He displays the mangled corpses of the assassins who dared to ambush Dale. Sophia freezes in sheer horror. It is impossible to fathom a mere child slaughtered these grown men, leaving their bodies riddled with void holes. Their internal organs have been liquefied. A chilling doubt creeps into her heart. Has her training birthed a monster instead of a guardian? The Duke of Noir sees the potential and the danger. He knows his son requires a guiding hand to walk the razor's edge of power. He formally appoints Sophia as the chief advisor of House Saxon. No longer just a teacher, she is now a pillar of the family's future. Dale's destiny now rests in her hands. How she molds him will determine whether he becomes a savior or a tyrant. Even the Duke admits his limits. He cannot raise the boy alone. Only through her wisdom can Dale unlock his true, godlike potential. Sophia accepts this heavy burden. She resolves to understand the darkness within Dale's eyes and guide him through the shadows. Seasons turn to years, and the wheel of time spins forward. The young master reaches the age of 10. This year's banquet is unlike any before. High-ranking nobles from the Imperial court flock to the estate, drawn by the rising star of House Saxon. Among them stands a titan of influence, Marquis Urus. His sharp gaze fixes on our boy, sensing the latent power hidden within. Let us rewind the sands of time by a few minutes. The atmosphere was electric, with nobles marveling at the grandeur of House Saxon's banquet. The heavy hitters of the capital had arrived, the Emperor's own faction. These were the puppet masters who pulled the strings of the entire empire. To our protagonist, the motive was transparent. He knew exactly why these vipers had slithered into his birthday celebration. It was a silent threat to House Saxon, a subtle warning from the royal family that the eyes of the throne were watching, and the fate of Count Brandenburg was a lesson not to be ignored. And the man chosen to deliver this grim message stood right before our boy, Maris Urus, a presence that demanded attention. He was the spearhead of the secret operation, casually making his dominance known to the Duke's son. This is Lord Crimson, the master of the Red Tower, a man legendary for his overwhelming and tyrannical power. The Red Tower followed a simple, brutal philosophy: absolute rule through absolute strength. That philosophy turned them into ruthless executioners driven by extreme ambition. In his past life as Hanung, our hero had known the agony of their torture firsthand. Maris Urus stepped forward to greet the genius prodigy, the boy who had become the whispered obsession of the entire empire. He even brought up the rumors, the exaggerated tales of the young master single-handedly slaughtering 1,000 orcs. Dale accepted the praise with a stoic smile, wishing the Marquis a pleasant evening. Moments later, he slipped away to the balcony to escape the suffocating crowd. As always, our main character is a chaotic mix of genius and S-class introvert. He despises social gatherings, his mind focused solely on his training. There was also the danger of his secrets being exposed. With so many questionable nobles spying on him, one slip-up could be fatal. Suddenly, the silence of the night was shattered. A woman's terrified scream pierced the air. The sounds of a struggle followed. Without hesitation, Dale launched himself toward the source of the commotion. He discovered a helpless maid of House Saxon being cornered. A grotesque, gluttonous noble was forcing himself upon her. The scum had even drawn a dagger, holding the cold steel against her throat and threatening her life. With the party in full swing, no one else was around to save her. But Dale arrived just in time, catching the predator in the act. The sudden appearance of the young master struck fear into the red-faced noble. He froze, realizing he was no longer alone. Dale approached the filth slowly. Yet, the arrogant noble had the audacity to claim he was merely teaching the Duke's son a lesson. He dared to suggest using the maid as a prop to show the boy how adults express their love. Rage boiled within Dale, and he pointed a trembling finger at the man. He whispered a promise of safety to the maid. In the same breath, his mana circle ignited, humming with dangerous energy. Dale knew the rules of this world better than anyone. The strict hierarchy meant attacking a superior noble was unthinkable suicide, but he didn't care. An ice bullet materialized and tore through the air, grazing the noble's face and sending him scrambling to the ground in terror. Hierarchy be damned. The young master refused to abandon his morals, even if it meant drawing blood from one of the emperor's own servants. The noble touched his bleeding cheek, his shock turning to indignation. He tried to confront the boy, but Dale was finished with diplomacy. There is no reasoning with a pig. Dale looked down at him with cold, dead eyes. Treating him like the animal he was, Dale commanded the man to his knees. The noble attempted to resist, but our boy's voice roared with the weight of a king. Like father, like son, the aura was suffocating. Dale humiliated the man, ordering him to grovel and apologize to the terrified maid. The scumbag was stunned by the boy's sheer audacity. He stammered, reminding the young master that he was a representative of the empire itself. He spat insults at the maid, calling her lowborn trash. He claimed that kneeling to her would be a direct insult to the emperor. Dale stepped closer, his voice dripping with venomous sarcasm. Does the emperor also enjoy molesting women in his royal court? The remark was a verbal guillotine. The noble screamed in rage, but suddenly, the Duke and the other guests arrived on the scene. Lord Crimson watched the spectacle with amusement. He threw in snide comments, deliberately trying to provoke the Duke. Dale's father erupted, his fury directed at his own son. But the young master stood firm, announcing to all that this man had assaulted a servant of House Saxon. It was a bitter pill to swallow. The Duke refused to side with his son, choosing instead to maintain political face with Lord Pro. But Dale was relentless, threatening the snotty noble to stay on the ground. The commands of his father seemed to mean nothing to him in this moment. Instead, the boy stood tall against the Duke. He declared that guests, even those from the royal court, must act with honor and integrity. This red-haired creep had broken every vow of nobility. He had assaulted a maid and spat on the honor of House Saxon. That was a crime Dale could not forgive. He would not let this trash escape judgment so easily. Hearing the conviction in the boy's voice, Lord Crimson finally broke his silence. Shockingly, he sided with the young master, agreeing that assaulting a maid was a shameful display. To punish Lord Pro, the Marquis snapped his fingers. A terrifying flame ignited in his palm as he declared his intent to grill the man alive. The helpless insect tried to run, screaming for mercy. But the master of the Red Tower was a monster without pity. The flames surged forward like living serpents. They engulfed Lord Pro, scorching his flesh as he writhed in agonizing torment. The corrupt noble is reduced to nothing but drifting ash. Urus praises the young master's ruthless honesty, declaring it the only path to purge the royal family's vermin. Lord Crimson watches with keen interest, eager to see Dale's rise. Yet, even he shudders, realizing just how terrifying the boy's latent power truly is. As time ticked by, the chaos settled into silence. The court nobles, their pride shattered, retreated from House Saxon one by one. The seasons turned, and a new morning arrived. Eve stepped in softly to rouse the young master from his deep slumber. He offered her a simple word of thanks, but Eve flinched. A blush dusted her cheeks, yet her eyes betrayed a lingering shadow of sorrow. Dale pierced through her facade, asking what troubled her. The maid bowed low, thanking him for his valor, her heart swelling with gratitude for the chance to serve him. But words remained trapped in her throat. The young master saw it clearly. With the experience of 2 lifetimes etched into his soul, no secret could hide from his gaze. Dale brushed off the praise with casual grace. As the eldest son, he would wear the mask of integrity, but only as a weapon to bring the empire to its knees. Speaking of duty, a summons arrived. His father demanded his presence in the main office immediately. The Duke sensed a shift in the wind. Dale's recent actions were too sharp, too calculated, raising questions in the patriarch's mind. Seeking to pierce the veil of his father's silence, Dale stepped forward and asked what burdened the Duke. He dropped a truth bomb that shattered the silence. The hero from the other world didn't just die. He was slaughtered alongside Bardell. Had fate been different, the next savior would have risen from House Saxon itself. The statement struck his father like a physical blow. The Duke reeled back, vehemently denying such a blasphemous claim. Dale stood his ground, his voice dripping with conviction. In his mind, he replayed the dark memories of his past life, the Empire's treacherous scheme against their bloodline. The Empire didn't save the world. They plunged a knife into Hanung's back. They knew the hero was too powerful, a potential tyrant who had to be removed before he could turn his blade against the throne. Even though Hanung felled the Demon King and brought dawn to the world, the Empire failed to burn away the shadows. The Demon King's domain remained intact. Instead of purifying the evil, they coveted it. They began cultivating that accursed land, turning a graveyard into their own private garden of power. They demanded blood sacrifices from the Saxon cavalry to fuel their greed, then offered the tainted land to the Duke as a gift. It was a poisoned chalice. Their nightmare would never end so long as the malice in that soil remained festering and unclean. Worse yet, the family name was dragged through the mud. The world now whispered their name in fear, branding them the House of Darkness. The Empire discarded their own savior like trash. It is only a matter of time before they sharpen their blades for House Saxon to silence the witnesses. Dale's revelation left his father paralyzed with shock. He claimed it was mere deduction, but his eyes held the weight of a history he had already lived and died through. The official history books were a lie, claiming the hero perished honorably against the divine sword. The Duke stared at his son, flabbergasted. That was a state secret, a truth known only to a handful of shadows in the highest courts. Dale pressed the attack. If his theory held water, the Empire was already plotting to devour them. They are a parasitic beast, an oppressive force that slowly strangles weaker nations until they submit or vanish. The 10-year-old spoke with the wisdom of a general, leaving his father speechless. Desperate, the Duke lowered his pride and asked the boy for guidance. Dale raised a single finger, outlining the harsh reality. Coexistence was a fantasy. There was only one logical conclusion. They must annihilate the Empire before the Empire annihilates them. It was a declaration of war that the Duke never saw coming. The air turned heavy. The Duke's expression hardened into steel, asking if the boy truly understood the crushing weight of such treasonous words. The young master shook his head. He wasn't suggesting they raise a banner of rebellion today. No, this was a long game. He was laying out a blueprint for the next 10 years. The seeds of chaos were already sown. Resistance groups were growing, and powerful vassals like the Duke were already looking over their shoulders, fearing the Emperor's knife. The economy is rotting from the inside out, and bandits roam the lands unchecked. The pillars of the Empire are cracking. In a decade, those cracks will shatter. Armies and factions will flock to House Saxon's banner, creating a tidal wave strong enough to wash the Empire away. Dale laid out every calculated step, debating with his father until the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened across the room. Finally, he awaited the verdict. The Duke of Noir sat in stunned silence before bursting into a roar of laughter. It was a laugh of pure liberation. Pride swelled within him. His son possessed a vision that far transcended his own limited sight. The Duke no longer looked at him as a mere child to be protected, but as a force to be reckoned with. There, in the dim light, he officially anointed the boy as his true successor, the one destined to lead House Saxon into a new era of dominance. Dale allowed a small smirk to surface. The groundwork he had tirelessly laid was finally bearing fruit. The house was now his to command. With his father's blessing, he had secured the authority to bend the family's destiny to his will. He was no longer a subordinate. He stood shoulder to shoulder with the Duke, a titan in the making. But his ambition didn't stop there. His first request was a death wish permission to enter the Tower of Trials in Necropolis, a place from which few return. This is the ultimate crucible, a trial that determines a mage's rank against the ruthless guardians of the Magic Tower. Defeating superior guardians paves the path to glory. Climb high enough, and one might even seize the coveted title of Tower Elder. But for those who conquer the absolute peak, they are crowned with the supreme honor, the Magic Tower Master. The Duke accepts this path, yet terror grips his heart. The tower devours the weak, and Dale stands on the precipice without fully mastering the third circle. Yet, the boy's voice does not waver. He vows to shatter the barrier of the third circle immediately, a feat usually reserved for mages in their 20s, years beyond his current age. Even for a heaven-defying prodigy like Dale, this is madness, but he stands firm, driven by the burning honor of his house. He will crush the tower trial and force the world to witness his might. Then, no soul will dare question his legitimacy as the heir. The Duke sees the fire in his son's eyes. This is not just bravery, it is a calculated move to cement a legendary reputation. With a proud smile, he leaves fate in Dale's hands. A look of pure determination lights up the boy's face. Days pass, and they arrive at the City of Death. The Duke of Saxon steps forth, commanding instant reverence from the gathering crowds. Beside him stands the young master, Dale. He can feel the oppressive pressure. This trial will be a walk through hell itself. Whispers already circulate. They speak of the Duke's son, the monster with potential unrivaled across the entire empire. Yet, shadows of doubt linger. Jealous voices bicker, questioning if a mere child belongs here. They mock his power, refusing to believe a kid could stand on equal footing with battle-hardened knights. Enter Velik, the Academy's top graduate. He struts with arrogance, convinced the victory is already in his grasp. They are greeted by Elder Eris. In the absence of the Noir Duke, she holds the reins of the tower's administration. The Duke informs Dale that from this moment on, his fate lies under her watchful gaze. Dale follows Eris deeper inside. He learns he must face 59 elite graduates in this brutal examination. She unveils the arena, a colossal coliseum filled with formidable rivals, all hungry for glory. Eris takes the stage to address the contestants. As the host, she lays down the iron laws of the first tier. She begins with the most crucial artifact, the life necklace. This is a battle royale. Survival is a numbers game, and your life points determine who stands and who falls. The necklace acts as a guardian, shielding the wearer from the lethal impact of true magic. However, take a direct hit, and the shield activates. That activation signals your instant elimination. In short, one clean strike knocks your opponent out of the tournament. The victor steals a point for their own necklace. Only those who amass 3 or more points will ascend to the next level of the tower. One final rule, no artifacts allowed. Dale cannot rely on his legendary cloak to cheat his way through. Dale analyzes the rules. A cold smile forms. This is the perfect system to weed out the trash in the first round. His gaze shifts to the side. The other candidates glare at him, whispering monster for reaching the third circle at the tender age of 10. Their eyes are filled with malice. They have all decided to eliminate the young master first. They sneer, joking about abusing a child in battle, but mercy has no place here. They prepare to crush him. Dale simply smiles. Let them come. He is ready to take on the entire world. The trial begins instantly. The mob turns on Dale. A candidate channels dark mana, resurrecting a corpse right in his face. The others follow suit, summoning their own undead. An entire platoon of rotting soldiers lunges at the young master. Dale stands his ground. A zombie swings a rusted blade, aiming for the kill. The attack is deflected. Dale summons his own undead warrior, armed with lethal, razor-sharp claws. This beast towers over the rest. Frost aura explodes from its body, freezing the surrounding monsters in place. Terror strikes the crowd. They aren't just facing a necromancer, they are facing a dual elemental mage. Dale's champion strikes. It shreds through the frozen undead like paper. An opponent attempts a cowardly ambush from the blind spot, but Dale's guardian intercepts, blocking the blow instantly. The strike bounces harmlessly off the thick ice armor plating its back. 0 damage. Retaliation. Dale's soldier obliterates another enemy. The arrogant loudmouth from before panics, screaming cheater for the use of water magic. The so-called genius cries foul, claiming only necromancy is permitted in this sacred trial. Dale looks down on him with cold eyes. There is no rule against infusing undead with elemental power. This is true mastery. Silence reigns from the judge's seat. Eris has not raised a finger, tacitly approving his mastery over the water attribute. Backed into a corner, the desperate cowards play their final card. All three summon their undead minions to rush Dale simultaneously. Their strategy is crude but effective, drown the young master under a tidal wave of rotting flesh and sheer numbers. A critical handicap binds him in this trial. Relying on artifacts is strictly forbidden. With seconds before he is torn to ribbons, Dale calculates the only path to survival. He explodes into motion, flashing past the zombie encirclement with godlike speed. He zeroes in on an armed cadaver. As the rusted blade swings down, he weaves through the strike with hair's breadth precision. Seizing the opening, he infuses his fist with condensing dark mana. A thunderous blow shatters the creature's arm, bone and sinew flying. Snatching the falling weapon, he becomes a whirlwind of steel, instantly mincing the monster into unrecognizable chunks. The onlookers are paralyzed with shock. To their horror, a mere child is dismantling these towering undead giants as if he were cutting wet paper. But he is not done. Channeling mana to reinforce the fragile bone blade, he locks onto his next victim with the eyes of a predator. The undead soldier brings its fist down, shattering the earth, but Dale is already airborne, descending from the sky like a hawk for the kill. With the force of a meteor, he drives the blade straight down, impaling the beast from skull to sternum in one gruesome stroke. The arrogant challenger's face twists into pure despair as he watches his entire army evaporate in seconds. With the meat shields gone, Dale flickers across the arena. He delivers precise, incapacitating strikes to the terrified lackeys, leaving only the blonde ringleader standing. He stands trembling before a monster in human skin, a dual-casting mage, and a master swordsman wrapped in a child's body. Dale raises his blade, savoring the fear in his prey's eyes. Gone is the arrogance. The blonde punk falls to his knees, sniveling and begging for a mercy he does not deserve. But the former hero's heart is made of ice. Why spare a bug? The flat of the blade cracks against the fool's skull, sending him into instant unconsciousness. Total domination. Dale has wiped out every competitor single-handedly, hoarding all 60 life points for himself. He sweeps his gaze across the stunned audience, demanding they witness the rise of a legend. The second floor awaits. Here lurks the flesh golem, a nightmare of stitched muscle and rage that towers over any challenger. Under normal circumstances, this is a raid boss requiring a full party to survive. However, there is a slight complication. Dale has already purged the competition. It is now a cage match. The solo player versus Gorlock, the Destroyer. The restrictions have lifted. Unlike the first stage, the shackles are off, and all forms of magic are now fair game. Though artifacts remain banned, the young master needs no crutch to trample an insect. As the golem winds up a blow that could pulverize a mountain, Dale decides it is time to test the terrifying potential of his newly awakened third circle. The monster's fist demolishes the arena floor. It grins in triumph, but that smirk instantly curdles into horror. Its hand is engulfed in vile purple flames. Confusion turns to agony. The 10-year-old prodigy has unleashed his darkest art, the curse of accelerated decay. Even the Duke and heiress watch in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the brutality of his choice. He had the power to simply blow the arm off, yet he chose a far more sinister path. In the silence of his mind, Dale recalls his past life as Hero Hanung against regenerating monsters. Brute force was useless. The only answer was biochemical warfare. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. The massive golem dissolves into a puddle of putrid sludge, defeated by a single casual touch. What was once a tool of science has been reborn as the cornerstone of his terrifying black magic arsenal. It is not a trial, it is a massacre. Dale steamrolls through all 10 tiers, shattering every record in history, earning himself a luxurious 4-day break before the 11th trial begins. Meanwhile, the humiliated masses he left in the dust are forced into a grueling retrial procedure. 59 candidates scramble in the dirt, desperate for a second chance to prove they belong in the same world as him. Under the moonlight, Dale gazes into the fountain's depths. His solitude is interrupted by instructor Sophia, who appears like a vision, praising his flawless performance. He humbly credits her teachings. The compliment swells her heart with pride, but she is unprepared for the sheer audacity of this child. With the confidence of an emperor, he asks his own teacher out on a date. The elf is completely disarmed by his overwhelming charisma, though he simply intends to visit the festival. Flustered but charmed, Sophia accepts the invitation, while Dale internally celebrates his victory. A lovely flush colors her cheeks. She wonders if this precocious child truly understands the weight of asking a woman on a date. Little does she know, he is cackling internally. He knows exactly what he is doing, messing with her head while securing a trip to the City of the Dead's festival. Together, they stroll through the night. The young master shows no sign of fatigue, his spirit unburdened despite the hellish trials he just conquered. He savors the tranquility of his break. Silence wraps around them comfortably until they both pause to admire the radiant full moon hanging in the sky. A poetic tension fills the air. In Eastern culture, remarking that the moon is beautiful is often a hidden confession of love. The young master fumbles for conversation topics, yet strangely, standing there beside his teacher, he finds a rare moment of genuine peace. For him, her presence was more than comfort, it was a sanctuary. She was the sole believer when the world turned its back. A magnetic pull drew his soul toward her. The atmosphere shifted, signaling a change that no one saw coming. Before Dale could shatter the shackles of the third circle, he had to heed his master's wisdom and gaze into the abyss within. To transcend his mortal limits, he had to push his second circle to the brink of absolute overflow. Only by surviving the agony of a minor rampage could he forge the path to the third realm of power. But this trial was a towering wall. The scars of past betrayals haunted him until he was pulled into a frozen void of white. This was the realm of consciousness. Hansung stood alone in his meditation, forced to confront the demons of his psyche. His inner world had always been a desolate wasteland, a hollow existence where salvation was out of reach. Until Sophia appeared, she was the first light to pierce his darkness, connecting with his very soul. To him, she is the sun in his cold universe. The 10-year-old regressor is utterly captivated. Then, the impossible happens. Dale bares his soul and confesses his love to his master. Forget the protagonist who wait 1,000 chapters. This kid drops the truth bomb without a second of hesitation. Sophia freezes, startled by the weight of his words, but he doubles down, his eyes burning with a sincerity far beyond his age. Tragically, the elf misreads the moment. She embraces him, mistaking a man's devotion for a child's innocent adoration. Ironically, our protagonist is inwardly celebrating. The advantages of his second life are truly overpowered. Time flowed like water. As the rest period ended, Dale arrived at the 11th trial, his breath heavy but his spirit unbroken. The heartbreaking truth remains. His confession was not a child's whim, but the declaration of a soul who has lived a lifetime. Her dismissal stings his pride, but the battlefield calls, and Dale suppresses his heart to focus on the war ahead. This is a duel of fates, 1 versus 1. His opponent is Albert Rosenheim, a third circle mage, a grown man with no intention of showing mercy to a child. The rules are lifted, artifacts and dirty tactics are fair game. Even his protective necklace offers no guarantee of survival in this ruthless arena. With the shackles removed, the young master prepares to crush anyone foolish enough to block his path. The duel erupts instantly. Albert violates the unspoken code, detonating a massive explosion at point-blank range. He unleashes the Dark Arrow. The sky darkens as a barrage of destruction rains down, mirroring the legendary Gate of Weapons. But when the smoke clears, the boy stands unscathed. His artifact cloak repels the bombardment, yet the danger is far from over. Albert unleashes a second wave. The arrows strike like scatter bombs, tearing the arena floor to shreds. Dale moves like a phantom. He weaves through the chaos, creating distance with superhuman agility. The mage's opening move was a flagrant foul, a cheap shot the moment the bell rang. Yet, the judges remain silent. Neither Eris nor the officials intervene, their eyes glued to the spectacle of the young master's potential. This hypocrisy is exactly why he despises the rot at the core of the mage society. Albert gloats, raising his hand like a king of the dead. He summons his minions, delivering a monologue dripping with unearned arrogance. Dale watches the cringeworthy performance with cold, dead eyes. But the threat is real. The summoned soldiers move with unnatural speed, cornering Dale like a pack of wolves. Albert laughs, forcing the boy into a desperate dance of evasion, leaving no room to cast a spell. Suddenly, the tide turns. Dale unleashes a burst of mana at the perfect second, shattering the undead formation in one blow. The mage sneers, unimpressed. Trash, he spits. But the soldiers were never the threat, they were the trap. The death explosion spell activates. Violent purple energy erupts from the corpses. The shockwave swallows the young master completely. The man declares victory, celebrating his triumph over a 10-year-old. But his arrogance is shattered when the dust settles on an empty stage. A voice echoes from nowhere, a chilling whisper calling him pathetic for needing to cheat against a child. Panic sets in. Albert spins around, searching frantically. Dale emerges from the shadow itself, standing directly behind his prey. He mocks the third circle mage. The explosion hit nothing but air. The wraith transformation allowed him to phase through reality itself. The boy's voice is ice cold. Cheap parlor tricks are useless against true power. Before Albert can react, shadow vines erupt from the ground. They ensnare him, tightening like the coils of a serpent. The darkness screams, begging for the master's permission to feast. Dale watches, a cruel, satisfied smile gracing his lips. Permission granted. The entity of the abyss manifests, opening its jagged maw to devour the fool who dared to challenge him. The crowd gasps in pure horror as the summon ensnares Albert in a suffocating embrace of vines. Merciless blows rain down upon him until his spirit breaks, leaving him begging for mercy in the face of absolute defeat. With his opponent rendered unconscious, the referee's voice booms across the arena. Dale is the undisputed victor. He strides from the stage, eyes scanning for the next challenge, but his aura alone is a weapon. Paralyzed by terror, his competitors forfeit the moment they meet his gaze. From the third round onward, it isn't even a competition. Dale secures victory after victory without lifting a single finger. Every challenger retreats into the shadows, save for one final test. During this trial, the young master has polished his mastery over the third circle to perfection. Upon reaching the 20th floor, fate finally delivers a worthy adversary. Behold the Headless Knight, an entity radiating a suffocating aura of death. This monstrosity is the masterwork of a tower elder, a true nightmare made flesh. It stands as a calamity, a beast far surpassing any foe our protagonist has ever encountered. Whispers spread that this is a wall even the young master cannot scale. Yet, a smirk plays on Dale's lips. He thrives on the unpredictable twists of destiny. The air grows heavy as Dale unleashes his dominion over the shadows. His absolute control over the darkness forces the very atmosphere to tremble. The impossible happens. The ferocious Headless Knight halts its charge and falls to its knees, bowing in total submission to its new sovereign. But a tragic conflict tears at the knight's soul. Unable to reconcile two masters, it drives its blade through its own chest, choosing oblivion over betrayal. The duel ends in silence. Bound by an ancient code of loyalty to its creator, the undead warrior chooses self-destruction rather than turning its blade against its origin. Dale watches with cold fascination, so absorbed in the spectacle of loyalty and death that he ignores the shockwave rippling through the audience. The spectators are frozen like statues. Never in history has a creature of the abyss shown such reverence to a human child. The message is undeniable. This 10-year-old possesses a power that rivals the legendary elders of the tower themselves. Dale exits with the swagger of a conqueror, his worth proven beyond doubt. As he departs, the crowd holds its breath, wondering what height he will ascend to next. If he withdraws now, his climb up the tower ends here. However, the young master has no desire to chase the peak just yet. His goal is accomplished. To push further would only invite unnecessary peril against god-tier abominations. With wisdom beyond his years, he concludes his trial. As he emerges, Duke Saxon walks beside his son, basking in the gazes of awe and supreme respect from the masses. The High Mages now address the boy as a peer. Thanks to his dominating performance, Dale becomes the beacon that begins to unite the fractured northern territories. Meanwhile, on the frontiers of the dukedom, steel clashes against flesh. The cavalry fights with desperate fury, led by none other than the young master himself. Fresh from the tower, Dale is immediately thrust into command, leading an elite squad on a ruthless orc extermination mission. Such a complex operation should be impossible for a mere child, yet not a single soldier harbors a shred of doubt. They see him not as a boy, but as the true monarch of the North. He stands on the battlefield like a king of old, commanding destiny itself. Mission accomplished. Dale reports to his father with chilling efficiency, 150 orcs slaughtered without mercy. And the cost of this victory, 0 fatalities? Only minor scratches mar the soldier's return. Baffled, the Duke suspects magical intervention, but Dale shakes his head. He humbly attributes the triumph to the steel and grit of his cavalrymen. The Duke swells with pride, while Commander Helmet watches with intense admiration. The boy's tactical genius is terrifyingly real. After all, it was Helmet who chiseled the boy's mind in the arts of war and strategy. The young master has been absorbing the wisdom of the realm's finest warrior like a sponge. Helmet realizes the truth. The time for practice is ending. The drums of a true territorial war will soon begin to beat. The prospect of war ignites a fire in Dale's eyes. Seeking to sharpen his blade further, he turns to Charlotte, whose speed has reached a breathtaking new level. Her rapier flashes like lightning. Deadly and precise, Dale barely evades, seizing the split-second openings to launch his counterattack. She parries with elegance, but Dale is a storm she cannot contain, overwhelming her defenses with a relentless barrage. Even amidst his ferocity, her sudden thrust catches him off guard. Charlotte has evolved into a lethal warrior, yet she still feels small beneath his shadow. To her, he is a monster who conquered the 20th floor, a third circle mage standing on a peak she cannot see. The world sings his praises so loudly that the melody has become a torment to her ears. Dale laughs softly, looking into her eyes. He promises that her potential is limitless, that she is destined to transcend even him. In truth, her prowess already eclipses any prodigy of her age. But Charlotte recoils, her pride stung. She despises being coddled, hating that he still sees her as a child to be protected. With a wry smile, Dale whispers that he is an adult on the inside, a confession she brushes off as a jest. Later, the training ends, and the young master sits across from his mentor. Sir Helmet lays out the map, instructing him in the brutal efficiency of the hammer and anvil tactic. In the heat of battle, the cavalry becomes the hammer. They must tear through the enemy flanks, shattering their formation and crushing them against the anvil of the main force. The infantry stands like an iron wall, absorbing the enemy's onslaught. But the true devastation comes from the hammer and anvil tactic, a strategy that hinges entirely on the crushing offensive power of the cavalry. Dale watched silently, his mind racing as he realized the chilling truth. The face of war remained exactly the same across both worlds. Cutting through the lecture, the young master demanded a status report on Charlotte's progress. His sudden question forced the knight to pause, searching for the right words. While her potential was a mere candle flicker compared to Dale's blinding sun, she was no weakling. On her own merits, she was becoming a force of nature. With her foundation solid, she was perfectly positioned to inherit the aura cultivation techniques. Yet, a shadow hung over her future, one glaring flaw. Dale didn't need to ask. He already understood the dilemma. It was the fundamental clash between Charlotte's elegant rapier arts and the brutish, heavy swordsmanship of their cavalry. In this world, The path to power is distinct. Mages refine their mana through intricate magic circles, while knights forge their strength through cultivation and aura. Mages build towering bastions of knowledge. Knights, however, establish orders, passing down their lethal techniques from generation to generation. And the Black Cavalry of House Noir, they were nothing less than human war chariots, unstoppable juggernauts of destruction. Their doctrine was simple: obliterate the enemy with overwhelming raw power. And that was the problem. The girl's blade sang a song of speed and finesse, not brute force. Her sword danced like the wind, free and flexible. Even with her immense talent placing her among the 7 sword masters, she would eventually hit an unbreakable glass ceiling. She could never hope to reach the godlike realm of the greatest swordsman in history. The first sword, the divine knight, Bardell, the very man who fathered her. Tragically, his legendary technique, the Sword of Blossom, had vanished into the ashes of history, lost forever with the fall of the Night Nation. Or so the world believed. But Dale narrowed his eyes, wondering if such a divine art had truly been erased from existence. Following this revelation, the young master's training intensified into a hellish regimen, balancing command and cultivation. His reputation began to soar like a rising dragon. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The hour had come to unleash the terrifying results of his training. Fate moved its hand when the Duke received a brazen challenge, a declaration of territorial war from Baron Parker. The greedy noble dared to lay claim to House Noir's mines. Dale knew that, unlike his modern past, the borders here were drawn in blood and ambiguity. Yet, for a bottom-feeding noble to challenge a high-ranking duke, it was sheer insanity. It was suicide. Unless there was a puppet master pulling the strings. And there he was, Count Brandenburg, secretly backing the Baron's claim. The Count even sent a letter dripping with venom, offering aid only if the Duke surrendered the mine's profits. It was blatant extortion. Dale felt a mix of rage and twisted delight. That fool Brandenburg still hadn't learned his lesson after the humiliation Dale's father had served him previously. The young master smirked. He was more than happy to etch the fear of House Noir into the Count's bones once again. The Count had been stewing in his own bile, unable to swallow the shame of his past defeat. Too cowardly to strike directly, he chose a proxy war, using a lesser noble as a sacrificial pawn against the Duke. Disgusted by the scheming, Dale stepped forward, volunteering to lead the knights into battle, but his father shut him down instantly. In the Duke's eyes, Dale was still a child far too green to wade into the carnage of war. He scolded his son harshly. Slaying mindless beasts was one thing, but the complexities of human warfare were a completely different nightmare. As the Duke turned to assure his allies of protection, our protagonist stood there, the bitter taste of rejection heavy on his tongue. That evening, Dale pushed his body to the breaking point in front of Sir Helmet, his mind plagued by one question: why does he still see me as weak? Helmet offered a voice of reason, urging him to look past the stinging words. The Duke's refusal wasn't about weakness, it was born of a father's hidden burden. To distract the boy, the Knight Commander produced a gift, a simple wooden board used for strategy. It looked like chess, but Dale quickly realized this wasn't the game he knew from Earth. The mechanics here were far more lethal. It was a war game, a simulation designed to mirror the chaos and tactics of a real battlefield. Helmet prepared for a long lecture on the complex rules, but Dale simply snatched the board and bolted. He didn't need a tutorial. His sadness evaporated, replaced by a burning resolve. Board in hand, he marched straight to his father's chambers. He laid out his terms, a battle of wits. If Dale could defeat the Duke on this board, he would earn the right to lead the army in the coming war. It was an act of pure rebellion, defying the Duke's direct order to stay on the sidelines. Dale stared his father down. War is not just strength, he argued. It is a clash of minds. He demanded a chance to prove his tactical genius. The audacity was breathtaking. Sir Helmet rushed to intervene but the Duke raised a hand, silencing the room. A rare smile touched the Duke's lips. He accepted the challenge. But the stakes were clear if the boy lost. He would never speak of war again. The battle began. Pieces moved like armies clashing in the night, father and son trading blow for tactical blow. Sir Helmet watched, his jaw practically hitting the floor. Against all odds, Dale had maneuvered the Duke into a corner with ruthless efficiency. Even if the Duke had held back initially, the result was undeniable. Dale hadn't just won, he had dominated his father in 2 consecutive matches, proving his mind was ready for war. Victory has been seized. The young master has officially earned the right to command in the coming territorial war. He claims his strategy came from ancient texts studied in the library years ago. However, this was nothing more than a calculated fabrication. Dale had no prior knowledge whatsoever. It was the only disguise he could wear to keep his true nature hidden without raising suspicion. Having accepted his defeat, the Duke honors his blood oath. He grants his son absolute command over the knights for the looming conflict. Even the stoic Sir Helmet finds this decision overwhelming. Yet, the Duke issues a cold warning. Defeat is not a word in their family's dictionary. He demands to know if his son is truly ready to embrace the fires of war. The young master's voice rings out with steel-like resolve. He vows to prove his worth through action. High expectations hang in the air. The scene shifts to the enemy territory, within the quarters of Count Brandenburg. A roar of fury shakes the room upon hearing the news. Beside the enraged Count sits his son, a fool, drowning in wine and ignorance. Philip, the heir of Brandenburg, displays his utter foolishness. He arrogantly promises to crush the child of House Saxon effortlessly. The Count slams his fist, silencing his disappointing heir. He warns that their enemy is far more than a mere 10-year-old boy. That child is a monster, a being whose power exists in a realm Philip could never comprehend. Brandenburg seethes with bitter regret. He curses himself for failing to secure Charlotte when he had the chance. Despite his anger, he appoints his son to lead the vanguard in the coming slaughter. But there is a humiliating catch. Philip is forbidden from actual command. The true authority will rest with Sir Milvus from the shadows. Philip is reduced to nothing more than a decoration on the battlefield. The Count dismisses his whining son, ordering Sir Milvus to drag him away. Brandenburg itches to join the fray himself, but crushing a child personally would stain his reputation forever. He realizes this is a trap. Duke Saxon orchestrated this entire scenario with a hidden purpose. Days later, the scene shifts to Baron Greenbelt's domain. The Baron looks pale, as if death itself is knocking at his door. Instead of a veteran army, his reinforcement is a single child. The young master has arrived. Murmurs spread among the knights. They mockingly question if the boy can even lift a blade, let alone lead a war. Baron Greenbelt forces a laugh to mask his terror. He offers a respectful greeting, but internally, his composure is crumbling. Fear grips his heart. His fate now hangs on the whims of a mere child commanding his forces. The Baron invites him inside, but the offer is coldly rejected. Shock paralyzes the Baron. In a flash, cold steel is pressed against his throat. Dale's eyes are cold. He demands an immediate inspection of the forces. He cares not for pleasantries. He issues a challenge to the strongest warrior within the Baron's ranks. A shout cuts through the tension, and a red-haired warrior steps forward, boasting an undefeated record. His eyes burn with the desire to humiliate the arrogant child. Dale meets his gaze with icy indifference. He slowly withdraws his blade from the Baron's neck. He speaks the harsh truth. The soldiers of Greenbelt are blinded by their own prejudice. He knows why they despise him. They feel insulted that their survival rests in the hands of a child. Dale drives his sword into the earth. He accuses them of weakness. If they doubt him, he has every right to doubt their competence as well. Only blood can settle this argument. Dale is eager to test this so-called strongest knight, especially since the fool is clearly reeking of alcohol. The insult pierces the man's pride. Steel sings as he draws his weapon to answer the challenge. Havoc of Greenbelt fights for honor. But for Dale, this is merely a perfect testing ground. The air crackles with tension as they take their stances. Dale calmly asks if the knight has heard the rumors of his true power. Surprisingly, Havoc smirks. He claims to know exactly what the young master is capable of. This piques Dale's interest. If Havoc knows the truth, then where does this overflowing confidence come from? He suspects a hidden card. Suddenly, Havoc strikes. He moves with blinding speed, crashing against Dale's defenses. But the attack is futile. A wall of living shadow rises to intercept the blow. The knight unleashes a relentless barrage, forcing Dale onto the back foot. Yet, something is wrong. There is not a shred of aura emanating from Havoc's blade. It is to be expected. Only the chosen few can manifest such high-level power. Dale decides to end this charade. He invokes the ancient arts. Shadows erupt from the ground, seeking to engulf the night in darkness. Havoc's eyes widen in shock, but his instincts are sharp. He slashes through the encroaching shadow tendrils with wild precision. The artifact's power forces him on the defensive. He loses sight of Dale. The young master presses the advantage, weaving more dark spells into the fray. Yet, disappointment washes over Dale. For all the boasting, this man's skill is utterly mediocre. But then, the unthinkable happens. Havoc collapses. Completely drained of stamina, the man is face down in the dirt, unconscious. Dale can only stare in sheer horror, not at an enemy, but at the incompetence before him. He cannot fathom that a so-called elite knight possesses such a pathetic constitution. The weakness is staggering. Baron Greenbelt loses his mind, roaring at our protagonist for exhausting their ace knight mere moments before the war begins. But this outburst only ignites a cold fury within Dale. Dale looks down on him with eyes of ice, questioning if this fool truly understands the precipice of death they are standing upon. With their current miserable strength, they are nothing but fodder for the coming slaughter. He asks if the Baron intends to sit idly by and wait for their inevitable demise. The young master cannot stomach the disgrace. He reminds them that while the House of Saxon vows to protect the weak, they are not obligated to carry the burden of those who refuse to pull their own weight. With this proclamation, the atmosphere shifts. Dale declares that his own family's knights will take command, effectively stripping Greenbelt of his authority. The ultimatum is cast. The Baron faces a simple choice: submit to Dale's absolute rule or choose his own destruction. Overwhelmed by Dale's pressure, the remaining knights drop to their knees, swearing eternal loyalty to their new commander. The scene shifts back to the safety of the Saxon duchy. Lady Elena is consumed by a mother's worry, but the Duke remains stoic, assuring her that their son's talent is heaven-defying. To the Duke, Dale's future shines like a star. He is certain that success is the only path their child walks. The father believes his son is destined to conquer the world, but in reality, that very son is currently suffering a headache of level 9,000. Dale had assumed the warriors of the outside world would match his brilliance, but reality is a cruel mistress. They are nothing but a gathering of hopeless weaklings. He realizes this was a setup. The Holy Knight surely knew the Greenbelt barony was a sinking ship and intentionally threw Dale into this pit of despair. By the following dawn, the elite Knight Havoc is hauling a boulder the size of a house, begging for the sweet release of death. But the Knights of Noir show no mercy. They are reforging these scrap metal soldiers into weapons of war for the coming bloodbath. Havoc cries and complains like a child, so Dale orders Sir Surveil to break them down and rebuild them from the very foundation. Simultaneously, Dale orders a messenger to cross into the Parker barony to initiate a parley. In truth, Dale has zero interest in peace. A dark part of him simply craves the satisfaction of seeing Brandenburg's arrogant face before crushing him. The Saxon forces move with terrifying efficiency, establishing a secure negotiation tent on the chaotic border between the warring lands. Inside the neutral zone, Dale sits in silence, radiating an aura of absolute composure. He calculates that the enemy will collapse within weeks. The Knight Order of St. Magdalena is exhausted, having marched across half the continent on empty stomachs. With their supply lines failing, they are like starving wolves. They will undoubtedly launch a desperate, preemptive strike to end the war quickly. Baron Parker may be a slippery snake, but the knights he commands are a force to be reckoned with. Finally, the enemy arrives. Lord Philip, the eldest son of Count Brandenburg, steps forward as the commander, but Dale's eyes look right through him. He instantly identifies Philip as a hollow figurehead, a puppet wrapped in shiny armor with nothing inside. The man looming in the shadows, Sir Milvus, is the true threat, the actual predator commanding this pack of wolves. Even knowing this, Dale opens the dialogue with the etiquette of a high noble. Philip, however, chooses arrogance. He scoffs, interpreting Dale's willingness to talk as the trembling of a coward. Philip sneers, mocking that the little brat must have wet himself at the mere thought of a real man's war. Maintaining an icy calm and ignoring the barking dog, Dale asks why they agreed to meet on neutral ground if they only intended to spew insults. When Philip tries to interrupt with more useless drivel, Dale shuts him down, demanding the fool be silent so the adults can speak. Dale refuses to waste breath on a puppet shoved onto the stage to play soldier. He turns his gaze to the real power in the room, addressing Sir Milvus, the pure sword, directly. The enemy is shocked. They had hidden the chain of command perfectly, but Dale read their hierarchy as easily as a children's book. It is obvious the holy swordsman would never entrust the fate of an army to a talentless failure like Philip. Sensing Philip's humiliation, Milva's attempts to intervene before the fool's insecurity ruins everything. The fact that Count Brandenburg considers his own son a disgrace is a shadow secret, known only to the inner circle. Yet, Dale weaponizes this secret, ruthlessly baiting Philip. He asks with a smirk how it feels to be nothing more than his father's lifelong disappointment. Commander Milva sharply declares the negotiations finished. There is no value in continuing this disrespect. Philip is trembling with rage, desperate to lash out, but his mind goes blank under the pressure. He can only sit there, boiling in his own impotence. Dale knows he has won. He continues to poke the bear. With a cruel smile, he asks if the so-called Commander Philip needs to ask his babysitter for permission to speak. The sight of a noble lowering his head to a mere soldier. It paints the humiliating picture of a slave obeying his master. Perhaps such pathetic behavior befits the firstborn of a count these days. To Dale's eyes, the dynamic is clear. It is nothing more than a dog willingly accepting its leash. Sir Milvus attempted to talk sense into the fool, but reason holds no power here. The provocation had already sunk its fangs too deep. Philip's pride has been shattered into dust. Now, he is desperate to reclaim even a shred of his fragile ego. Dale sat back with the ease of a king, watching the hollow commander scold the true strategist. Like a predator toying with prey, he struck again, branding Philip a mere puppet of the holy swordsman. To fan the flames of fury, Dale twisted the knife further. He wasn't just his father's puppet. No, it seemed Sir Milvus was the one pulling the strings now. The psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. With just a few poisoned words, he completely dismantled the enemy's chain of command. Negotiation was never the goal, dominance was. He signaled his loyal shield, Sir Bale, ordering him to step aside and clear the room. Alone in the lion's den, Dale demanded a private audience with Philip, just the two of them, no interference. A summit between the two supreme commanders, the ones who truly carry the weight of this war on their shoulders. Philip clicked his tongue in annoyance, but he could not bear the title of puppet a moment longer. He agreed to the talks, ordering Sir Milvus to leave his sight immediately. Milvus tried to appeal to logic, but the arrogance of a spoiled young master is an impenetrable wall. In Philip's delusional mind, crushing the mouthy brat from House Saxon was his burden alone to bear. Sir Milvus realized the truth too late. Dale had already seized control of the room, and the veteran knight was powerless to stop it. With the audience reduced to just two, Dale shifted his demeanor. His voice carried a respectful weight as he laid out the terms once more. He hinted at a bargain, a treasure valuable enough to make Philip reconsider this madness. Dale placed his offer on the table. If the Order of St. Magdalena retreats now, House Saxon will benevolently fund their entire journey home. It was an insult wrapped in silk. Anyone with a brain could hear the mockery then, yet Dale delivered it with a serene, innocent smile. He even offered a polite apology, asking forgiveness if his previous truths had cut too deep. But then came the ultimatum. If Philip refuses to withdraw, his army will face total annihilation, and his knights will be shackled in chains. Worse yet, Dale vowed to drag the holy swordsman's name through the mud. The legendary reputation will be stained with filth. This was the son's final chance to save his father's honor and preserve his own dignity. Philip laughed, a hollow sound against Dale's absurd threats. He clung to the belief that Sir Milvus held the upper hand. In his eyes, this entire meeting was a farce, a desperate bluff from the start. Throughout the clash of words, the 10-year-old maintained absolute dominance. What a tragedy. Philip just discarded his last opportunity to walk away with his life. When defeat inevitably comes crashing down, Dale reminded the fool of who would pay the price. It would not be Sir Milvus. No, the one to face the executioner's block would be the incompetent, useless heir of the Count. Despite the grim prophecy, Philip refused to see the abyss opening beneath his feet. He believes the brat's smirk will soon be wiped away. He is certain victory is within his grasp. Desperate to prove his worth to the world, Dale could only hope that arrogance holds firm. As predicted, the negotiations crumbled into dust. Moments later, Dale returned to the Greenbelt Barony. From the shadows of a watchtower, Sir Milvus observed the enemy with the eyes of a hawk. The scouts confirmed it. The steel of House Saxon has begun to move. Milvus, a veteran who has survived countless hells, felt a chill run down his spine. The young master of Saxon was a monster in human skin. That gaze, that terrifying calm, it does not belong to a child. Even the veteran had to admit, this 10-year-old is a threat they cannot afford to underestimate. But perhaps this is a blessing. It is the perfect chance to crush a future calamity before it fully blooms. A dark resolve filled Sir Milvus. He would sever the head of the snake here and now. Today, they would teach that arrogant brat the eternal silence of death, clad in gleaming new armor. Lord Dale received the word. The enemy main force is advancing. Mounted on his armored warhorse, the boy raised his blade, his presence dominating the battlefield. He addressed the swords of House Saxon. The time to paint the earth with enemy blood has arrived, led by their 10-year-old warlord. The Black Cavalry let out a roar that shook the heavens. The war horn screamed across the plains. The Black Cavalry began their charge into destiny. Steel clashed against steel in a symphony of violence. Sir Milvus plunged into the vanguard, his lance seeking blood. The collision of the cavalry units was catastrophic. Flesh and metal twisted together. Neither side would escape this unscathed. For the enemy, victory hinged on one thing: halting the monstrous advance of the Nightcrow Knights. Their power was an unknown variable, an anomaly on the battlefield. To prevent disaster, Milvus had tucked Philip safely in the center formation, far from the jaws of death. Meanwhile, Baron Parker's forces deployed to the left wing. Their mission was simple: pin down the mediocre Greenbelt Knights and suffocate them slowly. At that very moment, Sir Milvus prepares to lead the charge with Count Brandenburg's finest. His elite troops move to strike the Nightcrow Knights from the flank in a devastating pincer attack, with the center and left wings holding the line. The path to victory lies open in the heat of war. His veteran experience keeps the morale burning bright. Encircled and pressured from all sides, the Nightcrows immediately feel the suffocating heat of battle. Their support is cut off. Now, the Knights, masters of mounted warfare, crash into each other with earth-shaking force. It is a clash of titans. The elite forces on both sides are evenly matched, their power radiating like a beacon amidst the chaos. And there, leading the charge, is a small boy with raven black hair. The moment the infantry sees him, courage floods their veins. Young Master Dale might be small in stature, but his domineering presence swallows the entire battlefield. When it comes to inspiring undying loyalty, he is undoubtedly the greatest 10-year-old commander in history. For the glory of House Saxon, he becomes the very tip of the spear, unwavering, sharp, and deadly. Sir Milvus watches the golden boy on the front lines, and even he cannot help but be impressed. They have finally shown their hand. They intend to settle this war with a head-on collision of main forces right from the start. The boy is willingly offering himself as juicy bait, a reckless move no ordinary commander would dare attempt. But this is exactly what Milvus wanted. He no longer needs to lure the monster out. The Knight Order of St. Magdalena is already beckoning him. He redirects his troops toward the only target that matters. In the name of Count Brandenburg, they will slaughter that child. However, it will not be so simple. The Nightcrows anticipated the enemy would target their lord. Instead of retreating into a defensive shell, the entire army charges forward. The collision between the two orders instantly becomes the bloody epicenter of the war. Milvus detaches from the main formation with a kill squad, aiming to assassinate Dale Saxon personally. His trusty 1st Cavalry Battalion rides with him, every single one a battle-hardened veteran. He trusts them to end this nightmare quickly and cleanly. Today, they prove why they are the elites of their beloved Count. Sir Milvus demonstrates the lethality of his spear, thrusting and carving a bloody path forward. But perhaps he is too eager, a knight. Crow slips past his guard, the blade threatening his life from behind. Milvus grits his teeth and twists his body with impossible flexibility. It is a desperate struggle, but he manages to claim the assailant's head in a flash of steel. He eliminates the immediate threat, but his veteran instincts scream a warning. Something is wrong. Surveying the field, he confirms that they are overwhelmingly pushing the enemy's elite forces back. The Night Crows are falling, but they are falling far too easily. They take minor damage, then immediately retreat and reform. The Night Crows, he knew, were infamous as the destroyers of battlefields. Yet here they are, fighting passively and cautiously. No, something is definitely out of place. Right then, an urgent report arrives from the left wing. Unable to withstand the assault, Baron Parker's forces are being bulldozed. The left wing, which was supposed to hold the Greenbelt Knights easily, is being mowed down like grass. An anomaly has occurred, something completely outside their predictions. Those Greenbelt fools are actually using Aura Panicked and sustaining immense damage. The soldiers turn to Lord Philip, begging for reinforcements. They suspect House Saxon's Aura Knights have disguised themselves amongst the Greenbelt forces to shatter Baron Parker's defense. Philip was supposed to just sit still, look pretty, and wait to claim the glory. But now, the fires of war force him to make a choice. The boy commander's taunting words echo in his mind. If this battle is lost, the only one to blame will be the incompetent, utterly useless son of the Count. Before he can ruin everything on his own, a messenger from Sir Milvas arrives with desperate speed. Milvas strongly recommends merging the center and rear cavalry with the left wing to reinforce their crumbling defense, but Philip's fragile pride and Dale's psychological warfare kick in. That arrogant fool silences the messenger. Instead of following the seasoned knight's wisdom, he demands all rear cavalry redirect to his position. He refuses to play by the book. He wants to strike the right wing instead. The fool believes that before the left collapses, he can and will kill that damned Saxon brat first. When Sir Milvas hears of this idiotic plan, his blood runs cold. He clearly ordered a bailout for the left wing, but that worthless brat wants to play hero, gambling the lives of countless knights. The right wing is already pushing back the enemy. Sending more troops there will only clog their movement and destroy their efficiency. But that fool Philip was drunk on the fantasy of glory, blinded by the thought of striking down the enemy commander. He ignored every plea for aid, a catastrophic error born of pure arrogance. Without reinforcements, the left wing was doomed to crumble into dust. It was only a matter of time before the main force was completely encircled. Seeing the formation shatter before their eyes, the officers begged Milvas to sound the retreat. But Milvas refused, clinging to a delusion that he could still salvage this wreckage. He stood his ground. He truly believed victory was still within reach, just like Philip. His judgment was clouded by a burning obsession to crush the child commander with his own hands. It was the look in the boy's eyes that drove him mad. That sickening certainty of victory. In the name of the 1st Cavalry Battalion, Sir Milvas roared to his men, placing their lives in the hands of their veteran commander. They awaited his final order. Amidst the chaos of the battlefield, a collective prayer rose up, seeking the blessing of St. Magdalena. They staked their very lives on this charge. Trusting in the protection of Goddess Sina and the Divine Sisters, this was the moment of truth. Sir Milvas intended to shatter the enemy lines and claim the head of Dale Saxon. With blind faith, they raised their blades and charged. Look at them veteran soldiers frantically chasing after a mere child. What happened to their so-called knightly honor? Meanwhile, Dale was playing them like a fiddle. He allowed them to close the distance inch by inch, luring them in like moths to a deadly flame. On the front lines, the vision of a mediocre commander narrows under pressure. The crushing weight of war and anxiety blinds them to the trap. With terrifying calm, Dale summoned a bow forged from pure ice and knocked a frozen arrow. Even a veteran like Sir Milvas, with all his years of battle, could not escape the fog of war that dulls the senses. Seeing the shock on the knight's face, Dale offered a cruel smirk. He asked if this was the first time the old man had seen true magic in action. The frozen arrow sang through the air, but he did not aim for the man. With surgical precision, he struck the mount of the lead knight. The beast collapsed instantly. The knight was sent hurling toward the unforgiving earth, head first. A sickening crack echoed across the field. Even specialized archers struggled to fire with such accuracy at a full gallop. Yet, a 10-year-old boy executed it as if it were child's play. The spellcraft alone was nothing short of miraculous. Without a god-tier combination of horsemanship and archery, replicating that feat should be impossible. But Dale was far from finished. One kill was merely the appetizer. He tapped into his core, activating the power of the third circle. A massive wall of jagged ice erupted from the ground, tearing a dangerous chasm between him and his pursuers. The path was severed. Milvas and his cavalry were forced to grind their charge to a screeching halt against the glacial barrier. This was the signal Dale's hidden forces exploded from the shadows, fueled by a burning devotion to protect their young master. The Night Crows swarmed the battlefield from every angle. They were prepared to sacrifice everything to shield their young lord from harm. Riding the wave of surprise, the Night Crows pierced straight through the heart of the St. Magdalena 1st Cavalry. Horror dawned on Milvas. He had led his men into a slaughterhouse like a fool. He couldn't comprehend that a mere child had outmaneuvered him in the art of war. The Night Crows had been waiting in the dark, biding their time for this perfect moment of reversal. To make matters worse, that incompetent Philip made a fatal error. His foolishness was leading more soldiers to a pointless death by the second. Because of his greed, the center forces were blindly overcrowding the right flank. The entire battle line was grotesquely twisted. Completely unable to function as a cohesive unit, Sir Milvas saw only one path left. A path of recklessness, armed with only his blade and his mount. He attempted to bypass the ice wall separating him from the Golden Boy. Despite his tactical blunders, make no mistake, Milvas was still a warrior to be feared in single combat. In a one-on-one duel, he truly believed he could turn the tides of destiny by taking the commander's head, but the boy just watched him approach, that same terrifyingly confident smile playing on his lips. In the end, it wasn't even close. Sir Milvas was completely outplayed and outmatched, even in the realm of the sword. Before the sun could set, Milvas and the remnants of his pride were in chains, kneeling there in defeat. Little Dale Saxon loomed over him like a giant. This flawless victory was born from Milvas's fatal habit, his arrogant over-reliance on the power of his aura. The rigid battle doctrines of the St. Magdalena Order became the very chains that bound them. Dale remembered all too well. In his previous life, the jailer who watched over him was none other than the holy swordsman of this very order. Whether he wanted to or not, he had spent a lifetime observing exactly how the St. Magdalena Knights operated. Even in captivity, he had learned their ways. He knew their strategies as clearly as he knew the palm of his own hand. Finally, news arrived. Baron Greenbelt had secured victory on his front, and the left-wing commander, Baron Parker, had also been captured. The day was won. Dale ruthlessly twisted the mental knife, savoring the moment as he pointed out exactly how Philip had destroyed everything. This was no accident. From the very start, every gear in this trap had been oiled and set to perfection. With cold humility, he remarked that the battlefield is chaos incarnate. But in that chaos, fools who court death have only themselves to blame. Citing the ancient laws of the Empire, Dale made them an offer. He would show mercy to those who begged, all for the low price of a few gold coins. But the 1st Cavalry was blinded by pride. They roared in protest. They would never buy their lives with coin like common merchants. They would rather die standing. If that was their wish, he would grant it. With a casual snap of his fingers, Dale ended the life of a prideful soldier in an instant. The grisly display silenced the room. He turned his gaze to Sir Milvas, and as predicted, the commander bent his knee to the victor. But Milvas did not bow out of cowardice. He did not fear the embrace of death. He was a soldier of steel. To die fighting on the battlefield would have been his greatest honor. No, he needed to survive. He had to live to warn the world about the monster known as Dale Saxon. Swallowing his dignity for the greater good, he ordered his men to submit to the enemy. By Imperial tradition, they surrendered, expecting the humane treatment due to prisoners of war. Surely, kneeling would satisfy the victor. Wrong. Dale had no intention of letting dusty tradition save these sinners from judgment. With a smile innocent as a child's, he delivered the verdict not a single St. Magdalena Knight would leave these woods alive. The order was absolute. Massacre them all. No mercy. Even the hardened warriors of the Nightcrow Knight Order hesitated, shocked by the sheer brutality of their young lord. Custom demanded ransom, not slaughter. Yet, the ice-cold authority in their master's voice was the only law that mattered. The hesitation vanished. What followed was not a battle, but a helpless butchery that sealed their loyalty in blood. In this field of death, Milvas realized his error. Refusing to die like a dog, he snatched a blade and lunged at Dale. Futile before he could even graze the young lord, cold steel pierced him from behind, silencing his heart forever. The Nightcrows were always watching. Dale was never in danger, not for a single second. As the light faded from Milvas's eyes, Dale leaned in with a whisper from the abyss. Do you remember the hero's death? The memory struck him. That bloody night. Milvus had been there when Brandenburg plunged the knife into the hero's back. He had stood there, smirking in the shadows, as his lord betrayed the savior. Now, Dale forced him to relive that ancient sin. In his final heartbeat, a terrifying realization shattered Sir Milvus's mind. Did this monster crawl his way back from hell itself to answer him? Dale unleashed his shadow cloak, and the darkness devoured the commander whole. This was merely the appetizer of his vengeance. The river of blood had just begun to flow. Meanwhile, the incompetent Philip was watching his right wing crumble into dust. His men were dropping like flies. By the time reality pierced his skull, the battle was already irrevocably lost. His cavalry was pulverized, and the news arrived like a funeral toll. Sir Milvus and the Oranites were dead. The left wing shattered long ago. The black cavalry had already tightened the noose around his main force. He was haunted by that kid's mocking smile. While Philip drowned in panic, his officers screamed at him to make a decision. Do something! To sit here and die like ducks in a barrel was a shame no knight could bear. But Philip had no plan. Instead of finding an escape, he puffed up his chest, vowing to fight to the bitter end like a true knight. His officers looked at him in horror. That wasn't bravery, it was a suicide pact. With a voice trembling in terror, the fool gave the order for the final charge. But the hatred for pisshead Philip finally boiled over. A soldier turned his blade against his own incompetent commander. If that traitor had known this was the end, he would have lived differently. He would have drunk more wine, held his love a little longer. He wanted to die in a warm bed, not in this mud back in the woods. The silence of the dead was broken by the Nightcrow's cheers. Perfection. Everything had danced exactly to Dale's tune. Even Philip was dragged in alive, thrown into the dirt at Dale's feet to answer for his stupidity. Yet, even in this humiliating position, the spoiled heir clung to his pathetic pride like a lifeline. He spat defiance, claiming that while the cavalry might break, their spirit would never be defeated. Pretty bold words for a coward who tried to run away the moment death came knocking. Philip deluded himself, believing his survival was a commander's holy duty, even if it meant feeding his men to the wolves for a lost cause. But by that twisted logic, a commander who has lost his army has no right to draw breath. Desperate, Philip unsheathed his blade, acting as if he possessed the honor to stake the battle's outcome on a sacred one-on-one duel. Officer Bale nearly took the fool's head off instantly, but Dale raised a hand, amused to see just how low this trash would sink. Dale granted the duel. The bastard smirked, believing his cunning had found a loophole to survive and steal the glory. He didn't even wait for the signal. He rushed Dale with a sloppy charge, his amateur form exposed for all to ridicule. Look at him, practically glowing with pride at his own cheap trick, patting himself on the back for being so clever. If he could just sever the brat's neck, the war would turn. Dale stood motionless, not even deigning to lift a finger. He simply allowed the abyss beneath his cloak to answer the challenge. The moment the shadows grazed Philip, they seared his flesh, a mere scratch, yet the spoiled noble writhed on the earth as if facing the apocalypse. One insignificant cut broke his spirit, reducing him to a sobbing mess begging for his life. Dale had hoped for a moment's entertainment, but Philip was far more pathetic than he had calculated. And thus, the grand symphony of war concluded not with a bang, but with the whimpering screams of a coward. Dale returned to a hero's ovation. The territory erupted in festivities, celebrating the young master's first legendary campaign. Tales of his genius spread like wildfire, specifically his perfect execution of the encirclement and annihilation formation against the Night Order. While the masses worshipped his prowess, a vocal minority whispered that the rivers of blood he spilled were excessive. The church zealots argued that the gods looked down upon such merciless slaughter with disdain. Cardinal Nikolai of the Goddess Cena Church murmured a warning: the child's blade serves us today, but tomorrow is a mystery. One day, that vicious darkness might turn against the faithful. Ignoring the politics, Dale went straight home. The first to greet him was his beloved little sister, Lee, who launched herself directly into his arms. Little Lee had missed her big brother terribly, while Uncle Helmet stood by, beaming with pride at the victor. Lee dragged him by the hand, refusing to let her big brother vanish again, while Charlotte and the others watched warmly from the shadows. As a filial son, Dale immediately went to pay his respects to the pillars of the house. As the representative of the Noir Tower, He was ready to formally present his absolute victory to the Duke. Duke Saxon showered his son with rare praise for a magnificent job, and Sir Bale received his accolades for guiding the prodigy. His mother, however, cared nothing for glory. She only breathed a sigh of relief that her little boy was safe, begging him to rest. Dale smiled. After months on the cold battlefield, nothing could compare to the warmth of the Saxon ducal castle. But while the Saxons celebrated, Count Brandenburg was drowning in a nightmare of rage. Expecting a triumphant return, he was met with 2 crippled knights in the absence of his incompetent son. Trembling in fear, the survivors reported the catastrophe: the total destruction of the St. Magdalena Knight Order, the death of Sir Milvus, and the capture of Master Philip. With quivering voices, they delivered the final blow. Dale Saxon was demanding a king's ransom for Philip's life. In the Count's eyes, these men had suffered a crushing defeat and shamelessly scurried back like rats. The holy swordsman's expression darkened. If there was one thing he despised, it was filthy deserters. To satisfy his wrath, Brandenburg ordered them dragged to the deepest dungeon, where they would pray for death long before it arrived. History would name this the Black and White Turning Point, a battle exaggerated into legend by the common folk. From that day forth, Dale, the boy who showed zero mercy, was known by a new title, the Black Young Master. By his 11th birthday, his notoriety had reached every corner of the realm. His father prepared a gift to match his rising star. At the official ceremony, he was to be anointed as a Viscount of the Saxon ducal territory. A Viscount, a title granting him the authority to act as the Lord's proxy. With this, his father was essentially handing him power equal to the head of the house. Dale bowed with utmost gratitude. It was sudden, but he immediately invoked his new authority for a specific desire. Meanwhile, the world buzzed with stories of his cruelty, claiming he slaughtered every prisoner without hesitation. Malicious actors twisted the narrative, painting the goddess's knights as innocent victims of a demonic child. In the shadows, the church began to make its move. To rewrite his destiny, he formally requests a pilgrimage to the holy papal state of Siena. It is the perfect stage to wash away the infamy he personally sowed. The Duke narrows his eyes in skepticism. He is not easily swayed by his son's sudden piety. In his eyes, fear is absolute power. Why would the boy want to trade such a terrifying weapon for something as fragile as Mersault? But Dale has no intention of seeking forgiveness. He intends to use the church to whitewash his reputation. The religious faction is a powerful piece on the board. Furthermore, his ambitions reach far beyond mere politics. He plans to make them an offer they cannot refuse. His true target, the forbidden grimoire sealed within the church's deepest vaults. Days prior, a sinister premonition strikes Dale in the dead of sleep. A skeletal nightmare rises from the abyss, screaming to be remembered. It is the ghastly ghost of his past life. It refuses to fade into oblivion. Memento mori, remember that you must die. As one who has already crossed the river of death, the connection sears his soul. That night, Dale wakes up gasping for air. His skull feels like it is splitting apart. The nightmare plunges him back into the abyss of his own consciousness. It echoes the pitch-black void he faced when he forcefully tore open his mind to form the third circle. To master the inner world is the alpha and omega of a mage's existence. Yet, here he is, tormented by demons of his own making, isolated in the darkness. One thing is certain, he is still too weak to fully control his mind palace. Just as a knight needs a blade, he requires a weapon of his own. A legendary grimoire must become the sword of the great mage. Though the Duke remains doubtful, permission is granted. Dale departs with only Bale as his shadow. They cross the infamous Black and White Turning Point. Here, the north ends, and the wild central lands begin. This is territory beyond the reach of the Saxon family's iron hand. Baron Parker, crushed by a mere child in the past, has fallen low. His surviving deserters have turned to wretched banditry. Fate is cruel. Today, these bandits chose the absolute worst prey to hunt. Blocking the path, they demand a toll in the name of the fallen Baron, masking extortion as law. They claim it is common sense for travelers to pay tribute. Surprisingly, Dale decides to play their game. He tosses them a prepared sum. The bandits grin, thinking they have caught a foolish whale. The coin pouch flies through the air, and greedily, they rip it open for inspection. It is a fortune satisfied with the massive haul. The thieves wave the carriage through without a fuss. But honor among thieves is a myth. As the wheels turn, steel is drawn from the shadows. Moments later, The path is blocked once more. A new wave of scum emerges, and this time, Baron Parker himself steps out of the gloom with a smug grin. He recites the same tired script about tolls and territory, completely ignoring the previous payment. Bale counters coldly, "The toll was paid. Double taxation is a crime against the Empire." But the greedy brigands feign deafness. They claim no coin ever touched their hands. Mockingly, they swear they are upholding the law better than the Emperor himself. Parker drops the act, hand over everything, or taste the blade that supposedly survived the legendary turning point. He dares to call himself the hero who turned the tide. The absurdity shatters Dale's composure. Laughter erupts from the carriage. He cannot hold it back. The young lord throws back his hood. Instantly, the Baron's blood turns to ice. It is the face of his nightmare, the boy who ruined him on that fateful day. Panic sets in, but Parker screams for order. It is 2 against many. This is their ambush, their ground. Surely, they can crush 2 lonely travelers. Bowstrings go taut. The archers take aim. Bale looks to his master. One word is all he needs. Dale nods. End them. Parker, blind to reality, screams the command. A volley of death flies through the air. The arrows seek to turn the young lord into a pincushion, but Bale moves faster than sight. With a single flash of steel, the arrows are sliced from the sky. The restraint is gone. A terrifying aura explodes from the butler, flooding the battlefield with killing intent. The archers couldn't even comprehend that their arrows had vanished before the aura night descended upon them like a calamity. Bale's blade flashed, severing an archer's arm with terrifying ease, slicing through bone and flesh as if they were mere paper. Without a single wasted movement, he locked onto his next prey. After slaughtering the line of archers, Bale shifted his deadly gaze toward the fleeing swordsman. The moment Baron Parker witnessed the carnage, the disgraced noble felt his sanity crumble. His legs trembling in absolute terror, stripped of all pride, he collapsed to his knees, groveling in the dirt to beg for the young master's forgiveness. In a desperate bid to preserve his worthless life, he swore an oath of eternal loyalty right then and there. Dale hadn't even raised a finger, yet this pathetic excuse for a noble was already weeping, invoking the goddess's name for salvation. Frankly, the young master found no reason to heed such empty prayers. He had stepped over countless corrupt nobles and bandit knights just like this trash. Such was the brutal price of traversing the lawless expanse of the central continent. Weeks of arduous travel passed as they switched from carriages to vessels to reach their final destination. Arriving by boat, they finally set foot in Dale's target. Behold the city of prosperity and holiness, the papal state of Sinapushal, the city of the Holy See. However, to those who knew the truth, such a title was nothing short of absurd. As far as Duke Saxon knew, his son was here on a holy pilgrimage. But in reality, judgment was the only fitting word for what was about to unfold.